We'll call the Thursday, December 4th work session of Narberth Borough Council to order. Mayor Deutsch, on these pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Dobbs, will you call the roll?
Yes, President Bush,
Here.
Vice President Rickards,
Here.
Councilmember Winston,
Here.
Councilmember Borough,
Here.
Councilmember Spear,
Here.
Councilmember Gaudini,
Here.
Councilmember Simonson,
Here.
and Mayor Andrews.
Here.
Just want to remind everyone of the Dickens Festival coming up on Sunday. Hopefully the weather will be cooperative, but the whole borough looks forward to it. So, to see many of you there. Mayor Deutsch?
You took my thunder. That's but
I get to go first.
just to elaborate, the streets in downtown Narberth will be closed. Please keep an eye out for detours, and please drive slowly because we're going to have a lot of people in the borough. So just be careful and please support the vendors and everyone downtown. And as you do your holiday shopping, you are highly encouraged to shop our local stores in Narberth and help support our local businesses.
And we'll have First Friday as well tomorrow, so
That's
feel
right.
free to
Also-
use the opportunity to explore our local businesses.
Also, if you're a volunteer and you want to help set up, please, there is a contact form with Narberth Online. You can go through them. Ken Kravinsky, for those who know him, he is coordinating volunteers for the event.
All right, thank you, Mayor Deutsch. All right, as this is a work session, we will have public comment at the end of the meeting. So if you're here to make public comment, please we'll give you the opportunity later. Although I think we'll probably allow, if members of the public have questions for Berkheimer after their presentation, I think we can.
Yeah, we
So if you're here if you have questions for Berkheimer, our tax provider will be having a presentation in a little bit. There'll be an opportunity to ask questions at that time as well. But first, first item is Fongji projects for 2026. Mr. McGreevy.
Okay, so hi everyone. Maggie had invited me just to connect with you all for work session because, as you know, Fungi is now a nonprofit. Our status has been approved by the IRS, so we're able to receive funding and then disperse those funds. So we have already received $20,000 in donations from 3 very generous board members, including Peter and Nancy Grove and Rich Myers. And we haven't even begun to fundraise. So we think that we will be able to raise, we're hoping we can raise quite a bit of money. And it will be money that could support council initiatives. Our mission, of course, is environmental stewardship. And I've been able to meet with the manager to discuss possible ways we could use some of the money. We'd want to coordinate with you, I guess in a way that kind of NIDA does. You know, we would have our own vote as a board, but we are very interested in coordinating. So that's part of why I came. And with meeting with Maggie, we were able to discuss how Fungi money could be used for the master parks plan, for example. It could also be used for rebates for heat pumps, for example, is one idea that we've talked about for residents that are interested in converting to electric heat. So those are a couple different ways that we might be able to use the money, but all of it would be used in Narberth, and it would be used primarily to offset carbon. And in fact, you know, one of the features of the website we're hoping to include would be a carbon calculator so that people traveling by airplane could calculate how much their carbon offset would be and that might then dictate a donation, how much they might want to donate to Fungi. And then on our website, we could make clear how this money could be spent directly in the borough. So it's a way of having a local impact for those who are really concerned about climate change. And I do want to thank, I think it was Cindy Rickards who had originally had the vision for this, and then John Walco helped us with the legal work. Maggie has been terrific, helping us figure out how to get up and running. Bob Weisford was our founding chair, and now I've taken over as chair. So I also thank Lee Davis, Rich Myers, and Nancy Green and Peter Grove. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to take any questions, or if there's anything else you think would be useful.
I would just add, in the discussions that we've had at the Fungi board meetings, I've just kind of explained what we have on our capital plan coming up that we've already approved, just to kind of give them some ideas as to what we have kind of on our schedule for next year. We've talked as well about having different buckets of funding, so if Fungi wants to set up different buckets that people can kind of donate money into, and what would be beneficial again in terms of what we have on our capital plan. We just want to make sure that we don't have anything that's too specific that would then restrict the ability for us to utilize the funding if we don't have a particular project that kind of meets that designated bucket. So really, it's up for council discussion. Council's always welcome at the Fungi board meetings. I think I've been somewhat negligent in ensuring that you have access to those, so I will just redouble my efforts to have you're welcome to join those. But yeah, if there's any discussion tonight, any kind of recommendations that you want to make to Rob in terms of some of the priorities or some of the things that we can think about, but otherwise, Rob gave a good overview of where we are with it.
All right.
So is this also the case that if we have the borough gets a grant that requires matching funds, that this would count as matching funds? You can't match from the borough money, right?
Well, in that case, if Fungi would want to then provide the money to us,
Right.
So they would collect the donations and then they could gift the money to us, then yes, we could count that because that would go into the general fund, and then that would be considered then borough money that we would match, and it would be earmarked, and we can show the correlation between the revenue that we got from Fungi as the donation,
Right.
that would then be used as the match contribution towards the grant requirements. Yeah. So we did talk about that as well, and that is an excellent use of that funding source, is to help provide us with additional revenue streams to cover some of those match dollars that we would have depending on what the grant, every grant is a little bit different in terms of what the match might be. But yes, we could utilize it for that.
Because I know, for example, that a lot of the grants we apply for don't allow for design fees.
Right, yes.
So we wind up having to pay for those.
In that case, that would be up to Fungi if they would want to
Well, I
donate
know.
money for that particular expense, but sure, yeah. I mean, that's why we want to have the open dialogue in terms of how to use the money.
Michael, did you have your hand up, or did I see somebody else? Okay. So your interest is primarily in CO2 mitigation projects that the borough is looking at, or
Well,
in general supporting park space and supporting open
Yeah,
space?
it's both. It's
Okay.
really both, creating green space, open space, tree canopy, but also direct electrification efforts. So you can imagine Fungi money could be used as part of an electric charging station, for example, or heat pump rebate, or any number of electrification projects. But I think Maggie was very clear that Fungi money would not be used for, say, staff salaries
Right.
or machinery,
Right.
or, so we're trying to be really clear on our website to encourage our donors, who have an interest in seeing the real results of their gift. And many of them have an interest in seeing, gardens and increased canopy, and also reducing the carbon footprint. So, yeah, the mission is broad that way.
Well, I mean, we plant trees every year, as you know, Rob. We do have various flower beds that are maintained by Public Works, and obviously various planners in the area, but also I think there's some at the Elm Grove Park, right? I don't know that we have any chargers planned for the next few years.
No,
We're still
it's-
gathering info on the ones that are, I mean, the ones that are out there are being used, but they are still, they're not being used all the time. So I don't think we see right now a need for more charging stations, more public charging stations, especially because we opened the one, now that the borough is no longer using the one in the parking lot behind the library. Now the borough has its own charging station. That one is more available to the public, so I guess we'll keep it in mind throughout the year.
I did want to, oh, I'm sorry. Also, the Parks and Rec Board had mentioned through its events doing fundraising, and we talked about whether Friends of Narberth Green Initiatives could be a vehicle for that to receive those funds. So that's another option too. So maybe there can be some coordination with the Parks and Rec Board.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I mean, if someone were to make a donation directly to the borough, it's not tax deductible, whereas if someone makes a donation to support the parks through Fungi,
Right.
it would be. So, yeah, that sounds like a good
Mhm.
discussion to have.
Yeah, and soon we'll have our website up, and it'll be tied to the borough website, and it will have a donation button, so we'll start receiving money that way.
And just to be, it's tied in that we will provide a link, so we provide a link to all of our community groups. So we will provide a link to their website, but all
Right.
the donations are done independent of municipal government, and that will be separate on the 501c3 nonprofit website.
But are all the gifts that you're getting unrestricted gifts, or would you allow someone to designate, a purpose?
Yeah, we've been discussing that, and we're leaning towards unrestricted so that we have more freedom, but within the bounds of the mission. And we're trying to specify further that the money would likely be used for the master parks plan or for heat pump rebates. It's kind of what we've settled on.
Because I do know the first two substantial donations were given and earmarked towards specifically Elm Grove Park. So-
And I think that's broad enough that the borough can,
Right, so in
Make
terms
that
of,
work.
so the earmarking, so restricted, unrestricted funds, that's what I was mentioning in terms of the buckets. So the buckets would provide kind of the parameters if we were to restrict the funds. And that's why we want to keep it broad enough, so if it's for parks-related projects, it could encapsulate any number of, improvements that we're making to the parks themselves. So that would be plantings and trees, playground equipment, events, activities, kind of whatever falls again within the mission that we could utilize. So yes, so that is one of the discussions that the board was having. I don't know that you've fully settled on it, kind of landed broadly in those two kind of categories. I will say when we discussed, when the board was discussing the heat pump, that would not be something that the borough itself would get
Yeah, I had a
involved with.
question
That
about
would
Yeah.
that would be something that the Fungi board would create their own application process, their own vetting and review process, and then would actually award any monies to recipients independent of the borough. What we would get involved with though would be if they would want to donate funds to us that we would then utilize for designated, parks projects or beautification or other
right.
relevant and appropriate activities.
Do we inspect heat pump installations? Is that something that
That is a good question. If it triggers a building permit, then yes.
okay. All right, yeah, I'd be interested to see how your
Yeah.
idea for the heat pump rebates, how it's manifested. So,
Mhm.
once you have a,
Yeah, it would be similar to PICO or, the federal rebates.
okay.
And in terms of, I guess, like the question about projects, I mean, probably anything that's on our CIP that's related
Yeah.
to y'all's mission would be a good candidate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, it's just that sometimes donors who want to give a significant
Right,
amount of money want it to go for something a little more specific.
Not a
If
heat
there's,
pump
if
rebate.
there's a significant amount of money, we can
Yeah, just-
negotiate.
you want to leave that
Discuss.
negotiable.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah, I mean,
if somebody comes and wants to make a bequest of some kind,
Yeah.
No, I know, but it's a little tricky, because let's say someone decided that they wanted to donate for a pickleball court,
Mhm.
right? But like, that wasn't something that, you know, there was general agreement that we wanted.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a,
Right.
I think something that is
Still a
currently
fine.
on our capital improvement plan is,
well,
we're not 100% committed to those, but we've already, you know, we have approved them, so I think it's at least. one
maybe
could
that
discuss-
wasn't a good example.
I think
but-
I think those would be reasonable things that someone could look at and want to support.
And again, this is why this dialogue is important, so that the Fungi Board knows what activities and events and projects we have planned, so that if somebody comes to them with a specific request to donate money for a particular project or idea, they would know
Yeah.
in conversation with council that that is or is not a project that we have on our horizon, because what we don't want to do is deviate from our capital plan and
Yeah.
and pivot on some of the improvements based on some donation that we might receive. So the idea is that we're sticking to our plan. That's the reason why we have our
Yeah.
capital plan. So this ongoing dialogue and conversation is important, so that Fongi can best guide their donors
Correct.
towards projects that we know are on the horizon.
Yeah.
And I think it might be better if they looked at, say, the next 2 years of projects, which are more tangible at this point, and things that are more than 2 years out are, you know, it's going to be a new council making decisions on that. So I think looking at the more near-term projects, and then, you know, if they're interested in some of the longer-term projects, you should talk to us, I would say, and make sure that those projects are likely to happen on the time frame that's in the CIP.
Mhm.
You might be able to have like a catch-all provision, that donations over X amount that wish to be for a specific project will be taken under advisement, you know, or something like that.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, we don't want to like overcommit to the donor about.
Just
what
say
we
will
can
be
do.
taken under advisement.
Yeah.
or- Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks, Rob, and thanks
Okay,
for
thank you
thanks
all.
for taking this on, and we really appreciate Fongy's work and your work as well.
Yeah, thank you. And I think Maggie mentioned maybe in the budget cycle next year, we can coordinate if you.
It's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So that'll give you 6 months. 7 or 8 months.
Well, we'll start capital planning in July,
Yeah.
so you got seven months.
All right, thank you. Okay, our next presentation is from Berkheimer, I'm assuming that's these.
I'll start. I'm the coughing one. My name is Bunny Proof. I'm your client development executive at Berkheimer. I'm the funnel. You can say, I don't know a lot about much at Berkheimer yet. I've been with the company about a year now. I, however, have been in client relations for over 30 years. So I usually can figure out who to reach when with what issue, and I'm pretty good with that. So I'll leave my cards here. Should anybody have any questions, you're welcome to contact me directly, and I will make sure that any issues, problems, questions, or initiatives are taken care of. I have brought with me Jim Hunt. Jim is our Director of Governmental Affairs at Berkheimer. He has probably forgotten more about tax administration than I have learned in the last year. And he knows at least 30 times more than I know. So I am going to defer to Jim for the many questions that were received. So thank you for those.
Thank you, Bonnie. As Bonnie alluded to, my name is James Hunt. I am the Director of Governmental Relations and Affairs for Berkheimer Tax Innovations. I've been with the company 31 years. And my role is to help educate our clients, our taxpayers, and the various agencies that we work with in regards to local taxation and answering questions, and acting as a liaison between our clients and our taxpayers and our organization. There were a number of questions that were posed to me about a week or so ago by Ms. Dobbs, and I responded to most of them in writing. I'll be more than happy to review those with you. The wage bracket analysis that was requested, the question was, is or the individuals that are on that report, all taxable residents of the Borough of Narberth? The answer to that is yes. The wage bracket analysis is based upon the income that is reported by residents of Narberth Borough, either through the remittance from their employers or from the individuals that self-report on an annual basis. So the income that was noted on there was from the 2024 tax year, and would have been made up of the, take one step back. The earned income tax is currently governed by Act 32 that requires every employer, except for the United States government, to identify down to on each employee level whether that employee has an earned income tax where they live, or if the municipality in which they are employed has an earned income tax. Prior to Narberth Borough implementing the tax, any resident working in an area that had an earned income tax and had a non-resident rate was paying those taxes to that municipality, and those funds remain in the municipality in which they were employed. When you implemented the tax in 2023, those funds in those areas that were remaining in the work location, but then we returned back to the borough. At 2023, your rate was 0.5%. 99% of the municipalities in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that tax non-residents taxed at a rate of 1%. So those individuals were having 1% withheld from their pay. 0.5% was being returned here to Narberth. The other half was staying in the municipality where they were employed. Once Narberth Borough put the earned income tax in, employers had to then identify residents of Narberth Borough that their tax rate was 0.5%. So if it was in the municipality that did not have an earned income tax, such as Upper Marion and Lower Marion, those employers are still required to identify down to a employee level each of their employees and whether they have an earned income tax where they live or not. In case of a Narberth Borough resident working in Lower Marion, the Lower Marion employer would identify that they have an earned income tax rate, currently 0.75%. They would identify that Lower Marion does not have an earned income tax in place. They would be withholding at 0.75%, remitting those funds to us on a quarterly basis, at which point we identify those funds to where they belong and distribute those to the borough. Distributions are made twice weekly. So in the same case, all the employers here in Narberth were then required to identify individuals that reside here in Narberth and now have an earned income tax, and they began to withhold those amounts from their pay. The only caveat to that is in the city of Philadelphia, individuals who reside in Narberth Borough that work in the city of Philadelphia pay the city of Philadelphia wage tax, which is currently 3.498%. Those monies stay in stay in the city of Philadelphia, and none of those funds are received by Narberth Borough. But those individuals do get a credit for what they paid to the city of Philadelphia against their local earned income tax, regardless of where those wages were earned. So the question was, there's 1,909 residents who had earned income tax reported in 2024. Of that number, only 440 had the earned income tax withheld in the municipality where they worked. So once you had implemented the tax, it actually resulted in the lion's share of your residents now being subject to the tax that they were not subject to before. So those funds are coming to the borough of Narberth, and through either employer withholdings or those that are self-employed are required to make quarterly estimated payments and file a return each year with us. Under Act 32, any individual with an earned income, with taxable earned income, is required to file a final return. Or if they have been identified as in year one, we identify all the residents here of Northbrook Borough. Through information was available through the Pennsylvania Department of Revenue and the Pennsylvania Department of Education. All the residents who had reported as being taxable for Northbrook Borough under Act 40, at their PA 44. So we had sent out notifications in 2023 to all those individuals, notifying them of the fact that the tax was now in place. And then we also notified all the employers in the Commonwealth that we deal with, that Northbrook Borough has an earned income tax in place now, and that they are required. Employers are also required to make that determination twice per year, based upon the information that's available through the Department of Community and Economic Development. They are required on January 1st and July 1st of each year to verify the earned income tax rates that are due from their employees. So when we have provided the information on the wage bracket analysis, it also includes information on the revenues that are being lost to the city of Philadelphia based upon the credit I just described. There's also a credit that is due for individuals that work in non-reciprocating states, meaning states that do not withhold Pennsylvania's state income tax rate, but instead tax residents of Pennsylvania working there at a non-resident rate. Those two states are New York and Delaware. Both those states tax non-residents at a rate greater than the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So those individuals get to apply that Delaware non-resident tax against their state liability first, and the remaining amount then can be applied to local tax on those wages earned in the state of Delaware in this example. So we had done the analysis to determine what the total taxable earned income tax would be versus if you were to raise the rate, and what the additional revenue would be, and provided that to the borough when they were investigating raising the rate from 0.5% to 0.75% last year, and when they're looking to potentially raise it again to 1% next year. Well, one question that, there were a few questions that were posed today. I apologize. I want to make sure I addressed your prior questions.
Yeah, I think everything that came last week, we found it very helpful during our discussions about raising the IT.
There were some additional questions that were posed today.
Yeah, I think we've been hearing a lot about residents. I think another round of letters went out about fees
I can explain that to you.
Thank you.
When you implemented your earned income tax, under Act 192, Act 192 gives tax administrators in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania the right to apply collection costs to delinquent collections. When you implemented the tax, you passed and authorized our fee structure under Act 192 via Resolution 2022-30, which included the cost structure that would be charged to delinquent collections. It was signed by yourself, Mr. Bush, as council president at that time. Those fees are also authorized through the Montgomery County Tax Collection Committee and its contract as well. And they are applied to delinquent collections for the sole fact that under the current contract here in Montgomery County, municipalities do not pay for any commissions on delinquent funds that are collected. Those are actually billed as costs directly to the taxpayer, and there is a set scale that applies. The reason that your residents are receiving notifications now for 2023 is 2023 was the first year the earned income tax was in place. Pennsylvania Department of Revenue, in agreement with each of the 69 tax collection districts in the Commonwealth, provide to their collector a report showing the earned income tax that was reported by individuals that identified themselves as residents of Northbrook Borough to us, and we then do a comparison between what was actually shown as income to us versus what was reported to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. under Act 32, earned income, the definition of earned income and net profits is identical for state and local purposes. So if an individual reported income on line 1 or line 4 of their PA 40, they are required to report that same income to the local collector and file on an annual basis. That annual return is due on April 15th, just as the state and federal return is. So we got the report for 2023 from the Pennsylvania Department of Revenue in July. We then do a comparison of the wages that were shown on the PA 40 form versus the wages that were reported locally. And if there's any discrepancies, then we notify the resident, the taxpayer, of that discrepancy, giving them the opportunity to provide explanation why there's a discrepancy. And there are a few reasons there would be discrepancies. One, clergy housing allowance is taxable by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It's not taxed on a local level. Active military pay that's paid for service rendered by Pennsylvania residents in Pennsylvania is taxable to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It's not taxable locally. And lastly, Subchapter S Corporation net profits is taxed, shown on line 4 of a PA 40 form, but is not taxed on a local level because it's considered to be investment income. So we send out those notifications, we give the, identifying that discrepancy, giving the taxpayer the opportunity to respond within 30 days without interest or penalty. There is a failure to file fee of $25 that's applied to that first notice.
Isn't that a penalty?
Yeah,
How is that not a penalty?
yeah.
It's not a penalty, it's cost. That's the Act 192 costs that were authorized by the Borough and the Tax Collection Committee.
But it was we sent out on October 3rd that Berkheimer Process Department is processing the final returns for combined rate of 0.73%. We then told taxpayers that they shouldn't be charged any additional tax or fees. Those who filed at a lower rate might receive a letter for the additional tax, which many people did, which could include a late fee of $25, but you're going to be re-auditing this. So we are getting calls saying it was your fault that you collected 0.73%.
That's the rate. That was a blended rate for 2024 because you implemented the tax 4 days into 2024. So it had to be adjusted from the 0.75% to 0.73% to give the effective tax rate for 2024.
So then people got a letter saying you're late, we want the 0.02%, and we're charging you $25. We told them not to worry about it, and now they're getting fees for not paying the late fee of $50.
Well, they should not have been billed for the 0.002%.
Well, they are.
Well, if they are, we need to be,
And they're getting now not only $25, but they're getting
that's
$50.
because that's the second notice. Once it goes to a second notice, there's an additional fee that is authorized through that Act 192 resolution.
Okay, so we have a really big problem of miscommunication, and we are sending them to WeCare@PA Local Talks or the phone number, and folks are not getting any help or resolution.
How would you recommend
Yeah.
people who are
If
having
you're
an
getting,
issue?
if you're not getting that type of response, and Maggie can make me personally aware of it, I will
Okay.
make sure it gets followed up on.
Okay.
Because that is my role, is to make sure that we're not having taxpayers contact you. The notifications that go out include an email address, they include a phone number. We have a local office here in Montgomery County that is open Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays for them to be able to walk in and be assisted personally by our staff. We have an office in Exton, Pennsylvania, which is equal distance from Norberg Borough. That's open on Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. And
Yeah, but there's a general problem here that like everybody who was charged the incorrect amount has got late fee.
Yeah.
So the question is, can't you wipe that out?
yes, but definitely, and if it was paid, I certainly will make sure it gets refunded to them.
No, but I mean, not by each person calling, but looking at all the
Yeah.
people.
The
who-
burden should not be on our residents to fix
Yeah.
the mistake that you guys made initially. And we've gone, I think, 2 or 3 times now to you to say, please fix this proactively.
Why don't-
But let me finish, please, and we've been assured it was, and yet today, we all just got another email from a resident who was the person who brought it to our attention in the first place, who said not only did he think it was fixed, but now he's getting charged a $25 fee on top of the $25 late fee that he never owed in the first place.
Yeah.
If you could provide that to me, I really would like to do the research to find out why.
I mean, people are not gonna drive to Exton over a $25 late fee.
I understand that.
No. And I will say personally, I did reach out as a neighbor, not as a council person, and it took several emails. The email I did get back was not helpful at all. And I did say, well, this is actually good for me to know as a council person, because these resources are in fact not very helpful. But back to the point, we have a systemic issue here.
For the first year. I mean, it's.
Yeah, that
I
we
mean,
need
it's
to
not
figure
gonna,
this out.
hopefully it's
Yeah.
not gonna happen again, but we're still dealing with
Yeah,
last year. You know, we're now at December of this year. We've been dealing with last year since the beginning of this year, and we're finding out it's still not being resolved.
But the problem is the people in your customer service office don't know about this situation, so when they get the
Well,
call,
they do, 'cause
they don't know what to do.
they have access to the same information for
But they don't know that it was waived, and they don't know that it was your mistake.
Well, the notices that go out state if, you do not owe the tax,
Yeah.
the $25 is waived. So I'm concerned that people, if you're telling me your residents are being billed for 0.002%, which they shouldn't be, because that's not the rate that was, plus the amounts that would be due would be so
Right.
small, we wouldn't be pursuing them to begin with.
people are getting additional bills and additional fines as of the last 4 weeks.
Okay.
Like overwhelming.
Well, now, there may be a key difference there. What they may be seeing now are the notifications for 2023 if they fail to file a return or pay the 0.5% that was due in tax year
I don't think
2023.
that's it.
All right, can I,
Yeah.
so let's say that we have a lot of residents that work in Philadelphia, okay? So that means that, they have taxable income, but they've already paid the Philadelphia wage tax, so they don't owe money to the borough. They still have to file.
They have to file because the city of Philadelphia does not provide any tax collection information to any administrator in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Whatever state is withheld in Philadelphia, stays in Philadelphia, and they do not share that tax information with anybody. So unless we get a W-2 from a resident of Narberth or any other municipality we deal with, showing that they have Philadelphia wage tax withheld, there's no way for us to know that they have no taxable liability.
But they are still, if they are in that situation, they are still being charged the
They are
late
not.
fee.
They are not.
They are not charged the
No,
late
because
fee.
there's no tax liability.
So,
These are not
so
silly
it's nice that
quotes.
you say that, but I know for a fact that that is not true. My son made less than the limit. He worked as a summer camp counselor and made less than the limit. We thought that he did not have to fill out the form. We went through the whole form, we got to the bottom, 0 owed. So I said, I don't think you have to file this.
Well, you
So
do.
I'm clear. But you do, right? He got nailed with the $25 late fee for not filing it. When in fact, because he made less than the limit and, but had EIT withheld, he was actually owed the $27 that he paid in EIT.
Not all the time. And there's a reason for that.
Well, so wait a minute.
Okay.
So he doesn't owe any money. He's owed $27 because he paid that money in, which wasn't owed because he was under the limit. He was working here in Narberth.
Okay.
He got charged the $25, so he only got $2 back when you actually owed him the money. Why is he getting charged a late fee for not filing when he didn't owe any money? According to you, he shouldn't have been charged a late fee.
All right, so it sounds like if you have no liability, either because you had no taxable income whatsoever, or because you work in Philadelphia, or if you work in New York or Delaware, it sounds like, you have to file the return, but you should not be charged a late fee. That's what you're telling me?
You should, if you have any income, regardless of where it's earned, you are required to file a return.
Okay.
That's not the
But
question.
if you did not file it because you had no tax liability, and you didn't realize you had to file a return, you should not be charged a late fee when you file that return.
That's my understanding, that is correct.
That's
Okay.
not what you're doing.
That's not the
Well,
problem.
But
though.
what,
Well,
what
that's one
he's
problem.
saying.
That's what, that's
That's
not.
one problem.
It's a
No
current
problem.
massive
We are
problem.
Let
hearing
me,
this
let me
too.
see if I understand. What you're saying is that $25 is a notice fee, not a late fee. You're
It's-
calling
it's
it
a-
something
It's a
else.
failure to file fee.
It's, well, that seems like a penalty.
But it's not, it's a cost that's authorized.
It's a
So-
cost, but you, I think there's a,
Are the people who don't file paying the $25 then, or not?
Yes.
They
Even
are.
if
Whether
they
they,
don't know anymore.
whether, well, they shouldn't, if it's shown that they do not have
A
a
liability.
liability, they should not be being required to pay that $25.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, but we still have the problem of the .73 where we told folks, no, this was a mistake on Berkheimer, they're re-auditing it, and now these folks are getting the second round of, now you owe $50.
All right, so
Well,
it sounds
that-
like those folks, we should give them,
Yeah, who do we
Somebody's
direct them
contact
You
to?
can direct them directly to me.
okay.
And can you share?
I'll be more happy to give each one of you my
Perfect.
business card.
Okay,
before I leave.
thank you.
All right, so we will direct anyone who has that issue to you, and you're available over email.
Is that something that we can post in?
I prefer to not post my direct
Okay.
contact information
That's fine.
on your website, but I'll be more than happy to respond to any council person that forwards me information, or yourself, or,
Yeah,
Well,
so if council,
okay.
if you wanna just direct everything to
To
me
the
and
borough.
I'll bundle everything together and.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah, well, I don't think we want to be the, I don't want to be
No,
the medium
no, no,
no.
between you and
no,
residents.
if you can
but-
provide me the information, I'll be more than happy to investigate that. I will provide Ms. Dobbs with my findings, and that she can share it with you as the borough sees fit.
And
Alright.
what I'll do is we'll post some information, so if people have comments or questions, I am not able to answer or provide any
Yeah.
resolution to this, but I am happy to receive any emails that folks want to send me that I will then forward on to Jim. And then at that point, that will be a direct communication between you and the residents.
That's correct.
Okay, perfect.
And
So,
I will
Maybe you
blind
wanna-
copy you that I responded to it.
great, okay, that'd be great.
I'm going to reply right now to the email we got right before this meeting.
Yeah.
All right.
Folks,
You beat me to it.
okay, well, go ahead if you want to.
No, no, go ahead.
Other questions? Jim?
But the one question that was posed today was in regards to the $12,000 income exemption.
Right,
The $12,000 income exemption only benefits those individuals that work in a municipality that does not have a non-resident rate. So if you, I'll use my daughter. She makes less than $12,000 a year. She was a resident of Narberth, she worked in the borough of Norristown, she would have 1% withheld from her pay. She would be eligible based upon your ordinance for a refund. She would not be granted the refund because the borough of Norristown taxes individuals, non-residents working there from $1. So the $100 that you would, was withheld from my daughter Gabrielle on her $10,000 worth of income would not be refunded to her because the borough of Norristown is eligible to receive those funds. We were denied the refund and with that explanation.
but if somebody lived and worked in Narberth,
Their
would-
the $12,000 income exemption applies, they would need to file the return, show that their income was zero, withholding, and then request a refund of that amount.
And same if they work in Lower Marion because.
Yes,
everyone
correct.
doesn't have one.
So on this wage bracket report, you are listing 460 people who earn less than $12,000. So these are 460 individuals who all do owe.
Well,
do pay
they had income that was withheld on.
Yeah.
Depending on where they work, some of them, most of them could be eligible for a refund. Some may not, because depending on where they were. But employers in the Commonwealth are now required to identify that, you know, I work here in Narberth and I'm gonna make less than $12,000 and not gonna withhold the tax.
Yeah.
Because they have no idea what I make elsewhere.
Right.
The employer simply has to withhold it. It's the responsibility of the taxpayer to file a return, if they do a refund, to request it.
So this wage bracket report doesn't necessarily show taxpayers who are paying EIT tax in Narberth. It shows potentially that they are paying.
In that $12,000 bracket, yeah. And
Well, okay, well, what about individuals who are above 12,000 who may have mixed wage and investment incomes or something like that?
we want that investment income that's not going to report it to us. It's wages, commissions, net profits, anything gets reported on line 1 or line 4 of PA 44.
So in column C here, where you list the incomes, these are wage reportable taxable incomes.
For earned income tax purposes, that is correct.
All right, I just want to make sure I have this clear, because I think a lot of the, asking the right question is difficult, getting a precise answer, I think. Okay, so if people are listed here as having income, I don't know, say $1 million, say, of which there are some, some of that could still be getting taken by another municipality.
A percentage, as an example, if
Yeah.
you have $1 million income and you work in West Norton Township, in Montgomery County, West Norton Township, taxes at a rate of 1%. The employer is going to withhold 1% on $1 million. 3/4 of that funds will come to Norberth, the other quarter stays in West Norton Township.
Okay, so on this wage record report, people who are reported as making $1 million, if they work in Philadelphia, none of that is going to be coming back to them.
That's correct.
So is it possible, and this is what I would really find most helpful, either now or in the future, is a wage bracket report that only shows individuals that actually pay, pay reportable wage taxable income to Narberth.
Not including Philadelphia?
Yeah, not including people who, whose tax is preempted by another municipality in Philadelphia, not including people who are going to be fully refunded because they make $12,000. I would like to see who we're actually taxing, what are their income levels, because I think, we need to know what burden we're placing on individuals when we make these decisions, and, we need to have some analysis each year about the tax burden of the, obviously we also tax property in millage. It would be great that we have accurate information on EIT so we can make some determination about what the balance of the tax coming in, is on. We don't know the names of these people, of course, but it would be great to see how we're impacting households and families with the decisions we make.
Well, the wage bracket analysis did provide the total income that you lost, earned income tax revenue.
Yeah, but you understand my point is I would like to see, what we're asking of individuals in different income brackets. You know what I mean?
How many of the people who make $1 million are paying, how much of that money is actually coming to Narberth versus staying in Philadelphia? We couldn't tell that from.
But we could identify the individuals that used, down to the individual that used either City of Philadelphia credit or out-of-state credit.
Yeah, because we want to pull them out and see who's really paying the tax that comes into
We can certainly, provide, those
Yeah. We
on
could
an
get
individual level.
We could get a report like that.
I can give that to Maggie,
Okay.
because that information's covered by the confidentiality.
Yeah, we
Sure.
don't want names
No, I
on
don't
it.
Well,
It's just if it turns out that 5 people in the borough are really paying the lion's share of what the borough's revenue is coming in, that creates a different calculus for us.
I mean, there were
240 individuals that took City of Philadelphia wage tax credit last year with a combined income of almost $49 million. For an average income of $203,000 a year.
That can't be, there's more than 249 people that work in Philadelphia.
That took the credit.
Apparently not. Well,
Okay.
Well, I
What
mean,
does that mean? That there's,
They filed a return.
yeah, but that's certainly not, okay. Then how many other folks work in Philadelphia that didn't file a return?
So yeah, those numbers may
Yeah.
change as some of the late returns come in.
right.
Late returns, or, now that we're going through the 2023 state revenue comparison, there's individuals now coming back saying, well, I didn't file with you, because I believed everything was withheld in the city of Philadelphia. Here's my W-2, so that
Yeah.
if we would look at this report again for 2024, or if I pull 2023's report, once that state list, that number, Philadelphia credited number is always in flux.
Yeah, because I didn't get the first, I mean, guilty.
Alright.
guilty.
So when we get that letter, we don't owe a late fee because there's no tax due.
Correct. You should show that on your W-2 was withheld by,
Yeah.
in the city of Philadelphia, and, your income that was reported to Pennsylvania matches what, your taxable
Yeah.
liability from the city of Philadelphia.
Because that's why those numbers never made sense, because I suspect the majority of people that work in the city of Philadelphia are not filing.
Yeah, so maybe we should ask again in 3
Yeah.
months, once
Yeah,
everyone
because
has
we
filed
have-
their leave.
We have 3 people in my household that work in Philadelphia, and one got a letter, reminding him to fill out his form, and the other 2 of us didn't.
See, I never got a letter.
All right,
So,
Yeah,
so to summarize, other topics, other questions?
No. I think that is important because clearly
Yeah.
the numbers do not
So
demonstrate.
we'll get that information in a couple months after this issue has been sorted out, after everyone who has not filed their returns,
Yeah, just a couple
because they
more-
work in Philly,
Can I have
filed
just
their
a couple
returns.
more questions on the
Absolutely.
record report. Okay. So there are 872 people listed here as making 0 income. Does that include children?
Yeah,
So is there an age cutoff for this report? What if
their
there's,
income taxes apply to anyone that has earnable wages that are reported by an employer.
so who the 872 of 0?
Individuals that were on your tax rolls in 2023 and may have retired. When you
Okay.
retire the following year, you're required to file a return showing that you're retired. Your
Well-
income is 0, you get counted as a 0 return.
Would that include someone whose income is entirely rental or investment or exempt income?
Yes, it would.
Okay, does that include a spouse who doesn't work?
Includes housewives for the initial return.
Or house husbands as well?
Housewives, yeah, spouses. Domestic partners who are
Yeah.
not earning a paid
I know,
wage for services rendered to
I
another
understand what you mean, yeah.
beyond their kids.
So should this include every adult in the borough? It looks like there are 2,066 people with any income reported at all, and 872 with 0. That's 2,938 people. So, well, there are about 1,500 people unaccounted for here who are presumably either children or, is that right? Like,
Yes.
every individual should be in this report?
Every individual has earned income or was required to file a return,
Okay.
should be on that.
What about people who just work in Narberth, who live in Monroe?
You would not have that
Not
on
on
there
this.
because non-residents.
Okay, okay.
And, you received non-resident income last year. I think the total was
Yeah,
1,832 individuals work here in Narberth
yeah.
who do not have an earned income tax where they live. So it means the residents of either Upper Merion, Lower Merion, or one of the 91 other municipalities in the Commonwealth that do not have an EIT in place, or reside in New Jersey, Delaware, or New York,
Yeah.
work here and are subject to your
Do
non-resident earned
Do
income.
those people have to file a local return?
They do not. They're not required, but
Okay.
they can file a local return if they do a refund.
Are those people subject to a $25
No,
cost
because
fee?
of the law, you're only required to file an earned income tax return if you are a resident of a jurisdiction that has an earned income tax. in
Okay,
place.
so only our residents are getting these notices?
That's
that
correct.
They
We're
may
not
not have
getting.
filed the correct form. Hold on, give me a couple more. Okay, our ordinance says that a penalty shall not exceed 15% of the aggregate amount owed.
That's the penalty and interest allowed under Act 32.
Okay.
That's not the cost
That's
that
not
you
the
will,
20, that has nothing to do with the
nothing to do
$25.
with the 20.
Okay, what authority is it that it's, that you're charging $25?
Act 192 and the resolution that you passed on November 17th of 2022.
Okay, is it language from the state or something like that, or where does
Act
that come from?
192 was
That act is in the
implemented
state
in
law.
1997 that requires that, it gives tax administrators the right to impose delinquent collection fees on individuals and employers, as long as those fees have been presented to the tax authority
Yeah.
and have been agreed to. You had agreed to them. The Montgomery County Tax Collection Committee also agreed to those.
I can get you
And
that.
every other client, the 1,597 other clients in the state that we have for various collections, except for business privilege, all have the exact same fees.
So the year in question that people are getting notices for is the 2023 tax year. Are we gonna expect that this happens every year? Like, this time next year, we'll be talking about 2024?
When the Commonwealth Department of Revenue provides us that information, yes, it happens every single year.
I think it will happen less because of the
It-
issue with the blended rate.
And right now, it's more of an education, this is only year 2 that your residents have had to file an earned income tax return.
Yeah.
I personally have been filing an earned income tax return since 1978. I've lived in a municipality all my life, 7 different municipalities that has had an earned income tax in place, and I've been filing since I was 16 years old.
You have to do your taxes, bottom line. So if, and it is a personal responsibility. I don't believe that some of the younger people understand that they, according to Pennsylvania law, are required to file their taxes
Also,
themselves.
Our neighbors are filing their taxes and being dutiful. This is really confusing and they're getting fees. So I don't think it's a neglect. They're not wanting to.
No,
I think 2024 was, it was an outlier because of needing to have a blended rate. If the rate had started on January 1st, it would have simply been three quarters of
Yeah.
1%.
Okay. Well, I think right now we need to get this fee, $50 fee notice squared away.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously people who
Yeah.
owe money, if you didn't file it, you owe money,
Yeah.
you're being charged a fee, I think people would be accepting of that, even
Yeah.
if they didn't realize it. But people who are, the concerns are that the people who got tripped up by the 0.73% rate and the people who have no tax liability and we're getting notices. I think we've sorted that out.
We're hearing
Jim, do you have
from
another
those,
question?
yeah, we're hearing from those people. My concern is that we're not hearing from a lot of other people who are just not bothering to complain, who are just writing a check for $25 or, on
Yeah.
a small amount owed, and who are nonetheless annoyed, We might never hear from them, and I don't know. If there's any way we can sort of have a clean slate on this, it doesn't sound like there is, unfortunately, but do we have a way of like voiding the fees for that year?
I don't believe so, but I can certainly look to see if there's a way that we can identify those individuals.
Okay.
But the notifications for 2023 and 2024 have been out on the, 2024 failure to files have been out since October. And the 2023 state list comparison letters went out in early November. So. But those individuals that were identified through the state list, the Department of Revenue comparison have liabilities. It's not like they have zero filings, they just failed to file.
Yeah.
And it may be a case of where they worked in the city of Philadelphia. And if that's in those scenarios, where we should be waiving the failure to file fee because it's more of an education. 2 years down the road, that education should have been completed.
Yeah.
All right.
One more question, I think, just about who's required to file a return. So for families or for people who are married who file jointly for state and national, do they still file individual returns for local taxes?
Local taxes are based upon the individual. There's no
joint filing?
No joint filing.
Okay, thank you.
But we send a return out that has 2 columns. So you have income and your spouse does not. At the top of every column, third column,
Yeah.
you simply check housewife, unemployed,
Yeah.
disabled, retired. And once you check one of those 3 boxes,
That the other person doesn't need to file?
they don't need to file. Correct.
Okay.
So
Unless we at some point down the road receive taxable income on their behalf,
Sure.
and they would be notified of the requirement.
So you're 100% certain that the people who worked in Philadelphia who never filed a return have been notified?
They should have received a state less discrepancy letter, yes. Unless they didn't file with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania listing the school district code.
And is Social Security income tax?
It is not.
It is not.
It's not earned income. Nor is retirement, pension, third-party disability pay. None of that is considered to be wages paid for services rendered.
Great.
But isn't Social Security taxed at the federal level?
It's taxed at the federal level, and that does not get reported to us.
But so it wouldn't appear in a report?
It would not.
Because even though it's reported on that line you were talking about?
Line 1 or line 4 of the PA 44,
Yeah.
not the federal form.
One last question.
Yes, sir.
In terms of residents, so I'll use my son as an example again. Last summer, he had a summer job, living in California for 3 months, working there. That's his sole source of income. If he's otherwise living here, how do you determine residency, I guess?
Residency is defined as domicile, which is the point you expect to return to on a permanent basis.
So same as federal?
Yeah.
Okay.
When you're not at home.
Okay.
So, and in that case, if your son was, in California for 3 months
Yeah.
and had earned income, he would have reported that to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania as taxable.
Right.
He would have also been required to report it locally.
Okay.
Same is true as, I get this question quite often of individuals that work for the State Department and are positioned overseas. As long as they've considered themselves domiciled here in Pennsylvania, that income, regardless of where it's earned, is taxable for
Right.
state, federal, and local purposes.
Okay. So,
So I did say that we would allow members of the public to ask questions if they had some. So I'll just ask if anybody in the room right now has any questions they want to ask. Okay. Does anybody online wish to ask any questions at this time? If so, I see a hand raised. So John M., if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask.
Yep, I'm here. This is John Monroe. I live on Grove Place.
Go ahead.
All right. I posted earlier on a local Facebook group about this very topic because I received a pretty aggressive letter from Berkheimer just this morning. It was the second I've received. And it doesn't really follow the pattern being, as it's been described by the representatives, that we should be experiencing if we fall into this category. I am one of the people that at the time in 2023, I worked downtown in Philadelphia. I worked for the law office for that whole year and paid their city wage tax at the time. And that was reported both locally and to the state. The first notice I received came back in October, as most people have stated. And not only did I receive that failure to file fee, the explanation was that there was a discrepancy not specified. The amount was specified, but the discrepancy itself was not. It says the discrepancy was $123 from local and state. And they hit me with 2 fees, actually, failure to file and failure to pay. So that was a $50 increase in the charge. And this was the first I was hearing, not just a notice that there would be a revision of these tax returns. I reached out to the email on the letter, which was WeCare@PALOCALTax.com, which I think is the one they just said. I didn't receive any response, and then I kind of commiserated with a lot of residents online and in person. They said they experienced the same thing. And everybody's busy. I think we kind of came to the understanding, apparently incorrectly, that it was getting sorted out writ large. But then today, I got a similar letter that was more aggressive, threatening me with an audit, actually, from Berkheimer. And applying another $25 fee, failure to pay, a failure to file cost, another $25, and then a delinquent servicing fee of $50. So that just doubled the amount right there. and they demand it be paid by Christmas Day, which is a nice little touch. That's really appreciated, really considerate.
All right,
But,
John, do you want to pause there and let our representative respond, or is there?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, you stated you'd send an email to the website that's noted on the notice. Can you tell me when you sent that original email?
That would have been back in October when I got the first letter.
Okay. And you stated you filed a local return with us?
Yes, with an accountant. My family and I use the same accountant.
Okay. And do you have a spouse?
No.
No. Okay, no, I'm asking, because a lot of times when we see discrepancies between what was reported to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and what was reported locally, it's because there's a spouse involved and
Nope.
those two socials aren't interconnected. The only thing I can think of is that when your CPA filed the local return, he did not use the same wages that he reported to Pennsylvania, because that's where that information came from, directly from your PA 40 form. But I would be more than happy to review that and get you a direct response to that, of exactly where the discrepancy is coming from, and if it's been applied incorrectly, certainly we'll take care of the costs. But you know, under Act 192, it is the third notice that you received. So there were
Second.
well, yeah, failure to file, failure to pay. It was
All
in
right.
the first.
So wait, I think he's saying that the first time he heard from you was in October, and that included a fee, is that correct?
It's a failure to
John?
file.
Two fees, $2 $25 fees.
And there was no warning before that?
No.
Is that normal?
Yes, well, on the state list comparison, it is, yes.
And how would he get a discrepancy if he works in Philly, he paid
Right.
Philly wage tax?
Exactly.
There shouldn't be
City
a
wage.
discrepancy, so
But the only reason there would be a discrepancy is if, as an example, his PA 40 form said $150,000. His local return showed $136,000. There's a discrepancy there of $14,000. We would be looking for an explanation of the discrepancy. But in this case, if he had filed a local return and showed the city of Philadelphia wage credit, he shouldn't have received the letter, because his Philadelphia tax would have covered it. And that's why I'd like the opportunity to look at this, because if there is a glitch in that system, I wouldn't be able to address it, because we have 71 clients here in Montgomery County, and I have 1,597 clients in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that all receive those kind of letters. So, but here in this 3-county area, city of Philadelphia is a major factor in confusion.
all right. So it sounds like John, if you're still, I don't know if you're still on, but you should reach out to Maggie over email, and she will pass it along to Berkheimer. And if you
Yeah.
do not hear promptly, you should contact Maggie again, probably.
I will tell you that I respond to my emails and voicemails within 24 hours.
Okay,
And
perfect.
you can,
I can attest to this. He's
All right.
extremely responsive every time I've reached out, so, so John, yes, please forward me the information that you had sent to that original email, and I'll be sure to pass that on.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. And I see that Joe Stratton has his hand up as well. So, Joe?
Yes, hi. Thank you very much. Joe Stratton. I live at 402 Dudley. I'm just responding to what John Monroe just shared. I think it would be very helpful if you could look into whether John's email was received and not responded to. If we understand from John that it was sent in October and not responded to. And I think from a quality control perspective and a customer service perspective, it'll be really helpful to know if that email was received, and if it was or wasn't responded to, and if it wasn't, what changes will be put in place to make sure that our residents get the responses they need and deserve. That's all. Thank
certainly
you.
will be looking into that.
Okay. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks.
Anyone else online have a question? Okay. Thank you, everyone. I'm looking right now at the resolution we passed to establish the EIT. I'm going to read one section. It's under 45850B. As permitted by law, the borough may establish conditions under which a tax officer, which I understand is you, with the concurrence of the tax collection committee, may abate interest or penalties that would otherwise be imposed for the non-reporting or underreporting of income tax liabilities or for the non-payment of income taxes previously imposed and due if the taxpayer voluntarily files delinquent returns and pays the income taxes in full. So what sort of powers does that give us, the borough, here? It sounds like...
Well, actually, that is addressed in the contract with Montgomery County's Tax Collection Committee. If an individual voluntarily comes forward, meaning they file that 2023 return, well, before we sent them notification of failure to file, then there was no liability, well, there was liability due and they made payment in full at that time. Without interest and penalty, it would be waived.
So that does not have to do with something that is, say, a year late. That only has to do as if they file some, well...
Before they get in there.
They weren't notified.
If they weren't notified and they voluntarily came forward.
Okay.
That comes into play in areas that have had earned income tax in places for decades.
Okay.
Where an individual's moved in, talking to the next door neighbor, it's 18 months after they moved in, and the next neighbor goes, oh, have you filed your Berkheimer return? And they're like, my Berkheimer return? The local return, I moved from New Jersey, we don't have any such returns.
Okay.
They then download a return, they complete it, they send us a W-2, they had $25 worth of liability, they send us a check for $25, we process the return, and it's done.
All right.
Yeah, so you gave some great information, so again, thank you very much for coming tonight. As we've stated, if council has received anything from residents, please pass it on to me. I'll pass it on to Berkheimer for our audience, residents. Please email me, and I will pass the message along. We'll put information on the website and in the newsletter stating as such. And I think, Jim, some of the information about just kind of best practices and just knowledge for people, just as an educational component, if it would be possible for you to kind of draft some basic requirements, some of the FAQs that I think we answered tonight, like I work in Philadelphia, do I have to submit a return? So I think that might be a large portion of people, is they assume that because they pay the city that they don't have to then also file locally. So just kind of FAQs like that.
I'll pull right from the website, they're on our website, we've had them for decades.
Okay. Yeah, so if we can just pull a couple of those, if you can kind of point them out to me, and I will be happy to then post those on our website so our residents can access that directly on the borough website as opposed to trying to find them on the Berkheimer website that might be a little bit more familiar to them. That would be much appreciated.
And we would appreciate that because it benefits both of us.
Yes, yes.
And I think in the email newsletter as well, once we get to tax time.
Yeah, yes.
Not now.
And well, I
Say
guess,
February.
and then the other question is, so council passed the EIT to 1% on Monday. Is there anything that our residents need to know to do?
Once we get a copy of that signed ordinance, we will, it has to wait for 30 days to make sure it does not, is appealed by any of your residents to the
Right.
Court of Common Pleas. We would then notify all your residents in writing of that tax rate change.
Mm-hmm.
We also will notify every employer that's on our database that has remitted earned income taxes on behalf of a Northbeth Borough resident of the rate change, and it's effective January 1st. So those notifications probably would be going out early January because the 30 days will not pass until the end of December.
So can you put in that, because this is going to actually solve some problems, because we had residents who were paying the 0.25 at their work municipality and then bringing it back here. Can you also send out that letter of if you work in Philadelphia, you still have to file with that FAQ? Because we are not capturing those folks if you're sending out a mailer anyway.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Likewise, in my
Thanks.
letter, reiterate that those who live and work in Narberth, if you earn under the $12,000, you still need to file. Just a similar type of thing.
And I think it's confusing only because federally you don't have to file if you are below the, whatever that low threshold is for couple
State.
thousand
State.
bucks. State you do. I think it's over $33 or something like that. So, you know, there's some, I think that's why, for example, my son thought he wouldn't have to file because federally he didn't have to file.
And yeah, there's is some confusion in that regard, for the lower wage earner.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, and I apologize for some of the
No,
contentious
not at all.
nature here. We're just trying to filter the concerns we've heard.
I'll be honest.
And some of
with
us
you.
have encountered some of these difficulties as
I
well. so-
look forward to these type of meetings, especially with new clients, to try to understand some of the issues that are going on. I also, you know, I do 15 to 20 seminars a year with CPA organizations for the sole reason that I get that type of feedback and a lot of the changes that happen to me in the way that we handle delinquencies and costs from the results of those feedbacks from CPAs and taxpayers and so forth. So, last thing we want is them calling you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, you've given.
I'm gonna say
in your
call
latest
Jim
round-
now.
I'm just thinking here, in your latest round of letters, you gave people a deadline of Christmas. So we need to have these resolved, hopefully relatively soon, so that people are gonna know whether they have to pay these fees or not. So I just wanna make sure that we get this. Yeah.
Yeah, and the notices that go out, the due dates are 45 days from the mail date. We do not send any notices out after November 30th, so that they're not going out during December and the holidays.
Okay.
So
Okay.
All right.
we'll not start again with those until mid-January.
So basically by saying that, anybody who hasn't gotten a notice has like a grace period right now to make up if they haven't gotten a notice to file.
Correct.
I
Yeah,
don't-
but, and then you could put how to, because actually one of the things was I tried to file electronically and it wouldn't work. So what happens if someone can't do, how do they file now?
You actually, you can file with us. We have an app for Android and for the iPhone that you download the app. You simply take a picture of your W-2, you type in 2 or 3 pieces of information, it sends out, and you file.
Okay, that would be really helpful to put in the flash on
Yeah,
Friday.
we should put that in the FAQ.
Seriously.
Is there a fee for that?
No, there's no fee to file one.
That would make it.
That would
That
be
would
great.
make
Like my
like-
And
kids
that's
would do
mostly
that
what
in
they're
like
looking
5
for.
minutes.
If you
Like,
know, if you
right
have
now.
income, and you know, if you have Philadelphia income, they're looking
Yeah.
for the W-2, so.
And it's just Burkheimer? That's what we look up?
It says, yeah,
Okay.
Great.
Okay,
Thank you.
that-
That's useful.
Just install.
Thank you very much for
I'm
answering
doing it.
patiently. and
Burkheimer
answering
Drive.
my
I
just
questions.
installed it.
This moment.
Is it the Blue Bee?
Yeah, but you gotta get
Is that
the,
it? Burkheimer Drive?
you gotta find.
But
the
we really should encourage people, if they haven't gotten a notice, they effectively have a grace period right now to get filed.
You gotta find your.
We should let people know that.
Oh, I have that. That is a little game changer, yeah.
We'll summarize and put it out in the
Yeah.
newsletter.
Yeah, and I will get Maggie that information as well.
And I just sent you the ordinance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
I'll
you.
leave it.
Yes, I
Some
will pass
business
these out to
first.
the council. Yes, thank you so much.
Don't want to walk in front of your house.
If they don't get a notice, then they.
Well, they're getting, I mean, they're not, if they're not getting a notice. then-
Council, is there anything further?
No, I don't think so, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Discussing
both
it.
very much. We greatly appreciate you coming by
You're
today.
welcome, thank you, and happy holidays.
You know, all work, like I said, I'm just the, I'm just the
You
fun.
get all the complaints.
Seriously though, I mean, if Maggie, any of you, if you have any questions, feel free to, email me. If it doesn't go to Jim, I make sure it goes to the right people to handle it, okay?
Okay.
Take it, my cards.
All right.
And, yeah, you could scan it and just send it to your phone. If you're,
Hand them the mail.
QR codes.
there you go.
Great, thank you.
All
Thank you
right,
again for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
okay. Our remaining item of business is a discussion item. We have received several redevelopment proposals from a variety of different groups relating to borough property 201 Sabine. So council has discussed some of these proposals in executive session. They haven't been presented to the public, partly because these are at a fairly general level, these proposals, and partly because the next step would be to bring a developer in front of a public meeting to allow them to present their proposal and allow the public to weigh in. However, I think given the number of proposals, that's not necessarily a feasible step at this time. So I think I'd like to summarize some of what council has said in executive session, talk about next steps, and allow members of the public to weigh in on some of these proposals that they're probably seeing for the first time. So the document that's in the packet lays out a lot of sort of council's thinking on, let me call this up. Why am I? So, most of these proposals take the current layout of Sabine Park and the buildings and leave them more or less as they are. They propose to leave the park. I mean, I'm generalizing, not all of them say the same thing, but they propose to leave the park under the control of the borough, leave it in its current location, perhaps expand it, perhaps provide some amenities, it depends on the proposal. Leave the parking generally where it is, and take the buildings and adaptively reuse some or all of the buildings to provide housing. We have several developers here who work for workforce housing. They provide, they work with various state and federal grants to provide housing for folks at a lower than market rate. We have several proposals to do that. We have people who want to work with the borough to develop community space or to work with the current tenants, such as Wonderspring, leave them in place. So I think council is in general receptive to these ideas. They echo a lot of the concern that we've been hearing from the community is particularly around the layout of the park. Council had proposed moving the park, taking the space that's currently the park, allowing that space to be developed, and then taking the rest of the property where the buildings are now and making that into park space. I think there was a lot of resistance in the community to that concept. So the proposals that we have leave the park basically as is, or they improve it, but they certainly do not reduce the park in any way, which fits council's goals. And we passed a resolution a few years back saying that we wanted to preserve, or if possible expand, the green space at 201 Sabine. So the proposals fit in with that. We've heard from some community members that they want to keep Wonderspring in place, or they want to add community meeting space on the properties, and some of these proposals also allow for that. And our planning commission and certain preservationists are very interested in trying to keep the building, trying to keep the footprint of the building. And this even, we didn't necessarily think that was feasible, given some of the renovations that would be needed, but apparently a lot of developers think otherwise and are willing to take on the cost of the renovation and the redevelopment. And more importantly, these proposals would free up the financial burden of the site. So right now, as we've said before, the borough takes in revenue, we rent the property out. It's a challenge because we have to do, our front office has to constantly deal with concerns for renting the property. Dealing with tenants, it's not our primary goal as a government to be dealing with tenants. So this would remove the burden of A, dealing with deferred maintenance, and B, being a landlord, while still providing revenue to the borough. I mean, the borough would still be receiving money from these, through these proposals, generally through a ground lease. I think there's a variety of different funding mechanisms, but we like the idea of a ground lease. So I think that summarizes our discussions that we've had as these proposals have come in. So our plan, or what I would propose going forward is laid out in this in the draft that Michael put in the packet, which would be that we ask the office to work on an RFP. Instead of trying to pick among these proposals, we lay out an RFP more formally. We allow other people to have a chance to respond, and we kind of get everybody submitting along the same lines so that we can more easily compare these different proposals, right? I mean, they're slightly different. They all have similar ideas, but they're not apples and oranges. These are different proposals, and by laying out guidelines for them, we'll have a better sense of who we might want to work with. So at this point, we wouldn't be drafting the RFP. We'd be looking for a community partner or some sort of agency that might help us draft the RFP. That would cover a lot of these things that I've just raised. So the borough would maintain ownership of the property. The park would stay where it is. It would still remain borough owned. We would look favorably on proposals that add amenities to the park or that expand the park. But at a minimum, it would leave the park in its current state and would not otherwise alter it. It would adaptively reuse the school buildings. And with the purpose of adding affordable housing, as well as, again, we would look favorably on proposals that would work with community-facing groups that currently use the building, like Wonder Spring, or that provide community space for the borough. So I think that's a summary of where we stand right now, and invite council members who have opinions. I did see one community comment, which was, why is it a good thing to have housing that's not market rate? How is that helpful to the borough to have housing that is not, new housing that is below market rate? So I know some of you have strong feelings about that, so I'd encourage anybody to talk about why affordable housing is a priority.
Well, I've got comments kind of about because I feel like, we're finally getting kind of into a regular process, and I'd like to start out by kind of just sharing some thoughts and all of that. So I just thank everyone for coming out, everyone who's online. Thank you for council for working to get us back to an organized process to discuss the property, and to our manager and staff for everything they do to keep our website updated, to keep our materials available, post reminders about upcoming meetings. I've said this before, it bears repeating. Whenever I look at other boroughs' websites, it drives home to me just how much our staff really goes above and beyond to make information available, to post about meetings, to continuously look for ways to do that. So I recognize and appreciate everything that y'all do. I've long thought that this property offers us a really special and unique opportunity to address a number of different challenges and needs that this community is facing. These are challenges and needs that we hear about from residents regularly. These are the things that were articulated during the first round of community engagement on this property a number of years ago. And these are things that are adopted council goals in our comprehensive plan, which is our guiding document, and other policy documents. And so that's our starting point, is everything that we've heard, all of our various adopted policy goals and strategies, and our understanding of the very real needs and challenges facing this community. And that general understanding at a high level is summarized in our packet. Now, I should say, if there's one thing I've learned, it's that just about everyone I've heard from individually on this has their own individual take on what should happen at Sabine. And so I just want to acknowledge that there's a lot of nuance there. But at a high level, I'd offer what I think is a fair summary of the general feedback and those goals and needs that I was just talking about. It's a lot of, I'm going to be repeating a lot of what Fred said, but I just also want to communicate this on an individual level. So first, I've heard a general desire to maintain or expand the amount of parkland on the property today, and to get us to a place where we can plan for improvements to Sabine Park. I lost my spot. I think council's been very consistent in recognizing that and calling for that over the years. And on a personal level, I also recognize that. I played at Sabine Park as a kid. I hung out there after dark as a teenager.
Statute of limitations.
I know. So it was a long time ago at this point. I've taken my niece there as an adult, and once I have some kids of my own, I will be taking them there too. We've also heard that we don't want the park to just simply exist. We want to make sure that it is well used and well maintained and cared for and improved. I was the vice chair of the Parks Plan Study Committee, and we were unable to make any recommendations as to the improvements to Sabine Park, specifically because this property has been in limbo. The state, which funded that planning grant, told us directly, if you have not figured out where the park is going to be on the property or how big the park is going to be, then you cannot include this in the planning process, and we had to remove it because of that. So because this process has been in limbo, the planning process for Sabine Park has also been in limbo. And one of the other things that the Parks Plan process surfaced was the difficulty that we have in improving and updating our parks amenities on an ongoing basis. We have things like playscapes and bleachers and courts that get a lot of love and will need to be replaced or improved. And it is hard for us to stay ahead of that because of all of that takes money, and each individual improvement project ends up competing with each other and with all of our other infrastructure projects for limited funding. And so that's another very critical piece to this puzzle, is ensuring that we're planning for a park that we can actually maintain and upgrade and improve on an ongoing basis to ensure that it has a good level of service going forward. Second, I've heard interest in trying to adaptively reuse existing buildings on the property. When I joined council, like Fred said, the prior thinking had been to demolish the buildings and to change the way that the site was configured, to put the park on the interior and the building up on the memory. And that's probably the way that someone would lay it out today if you were starting from scratch. But that never really made a ton of sense to me individually because we're not starting from scratch. We've got an existing park, we've got existing buildings. We have a certain amount of community muscle memory for the way that the site is laid out today. In addition to the fact that people like the school building, myself included. And I've long thought that there's probably an adaptive reuse potential there, which was one of the reasons why I brought forward the fact-finding item in March, to get us a sense of what was possible in terms of adaptive reuse, parkland, and a number of other critical needs, which takes me to my third item, housing and affordability. Anyone who knows me knows that housing and affordability are core values of mine. So much so that my wife mentioned it in our wedding vows a couple weeks ago. And the reason I'm sitting here today is because my grandparents were able to move into what was effectively the workforce housing of its day, the row homes on Woodbine, and those were controversial in their day as well. But while I've certainly been vocal on this topic, it's not just me. Our comprehensive plan calls for housing diversity and affordability. We have prioritized this as a borough policy, and frankly, I hear this all the time from NARBs that this is a major challenge. We've heard from NARBs who are finding it more and more difficult to be able to afford to live here, or who can't find a place nearby for their retired parent can afford, or from folks who grew up here and feel that something fundamental to our community will change if we do not try to provide housing for the working families who have been so core to Narberth's history and to its character. We've heard from local business owners who have asked us to plan for more housing to support our business districts, to expand their customer base, and to provide places where our workers can live. Because if you're a business owner, a scenario where your commercial rents keep increasing while your customer base stagnates and your employees can't live nearby is not a good place to be. And I'd note as well that providing housing as a component of the overall Sabine plan also expands the constituency, the natural constituency for Sabine Park. It expands the number of people who are emotionally invested in improving and maintaining the park that they and their children and their friends regularly use, on top of the folks who use it today and who will continue to use it. So yes, we have heard that this is an identified need, and one of the principal ways that municipalities can work on housing as a policy issue, particularly in places where land is expensive, is by looking at municipally owned property. Fourth, we've also heard from folks who would like us to try to maintain some of the existing uses. for particular interest in childcare services. Wonder Spring operates there today, which I think would work well with both parkland and housing uses. And from our fact-finding process, it seems like there may be an opportunity there as well. And then the final two items we've heard from folks want us to try to maintain ownership of the property and to ensure that whatever path we choose, we should be attentive to the fiscal implications of our decisions. I mentioned a moment ago about making sure we're planning for a park that we can actually afford to maintain and upgrade and improve. That's a big piece. The other component is trying to find someone else who would take on the responsibility of improving and maintaining the buildings, which we, the Borough, have not done a good job of doing because frankly we're not set up as an entity to run and maintain mixed-use buildings. It's not our bailiwick as an entity. So with all of these different elements in mind, I proposed in our packet the outline of a process through which we could proceed publicly and thoughtfully, and which would provide a greater sense of clarity for the community on what the steps and the next steps of an ongoing discussion would be. And so the first thing that we would do, right, is, in what I have listed in there, is we would hit pause on any discussions about selling the property or moving Sabine Park to a different location on the site. We would say, based on where we sit right now, we want to continue owning the site, and we want Sabine Park to stay where it is in terms of its location. So that immediately speaks to two things we've heard from many folks about this site. The second thing we would do is ask for an RFP to be drafted, like Fred had mentioned, so that both we and the public could review what the RFP would be calling for. And now in order to draft an RFP, we would need to have some sense of what we're actually going to be asking to see, so we're able to actually analyze and compare things. Otherwise, the process is going to be too broad, and I think we would probably not end up getting anywhere anyway. So we propose the general guidance of the RFP would call for those things: maintaining the ownership of the site, maintaining or expanding the amount of parkland, and providing for an overall adaptive reuse of one or more of the school buildings, which may include a combination of preservation and new construction that would include affordable housing and would relieve the Borough of the responsibility of maintaining and operating the building. We also propose that the RFP be structured to provide additional consideration to proposals that incorporate existing uses that serve the community, such as Wonder Spring, publicly available community space, and/or assistance in improving and maintaining the parkland. And would ask for that, we would ask for that RFP to that effect to be drafted so that we could review it with the community, we could receive feedback, we could discuss it again. At that point, we could determine whether we wanted to take the next step and put the RFP out and receive proposals. If we do that, we could then publicly review those proposals again with the community, receive feedback again. And at that point, if we decided that we would want to proceed with an individual proposal, we could again discuss that with the community, receive feedback again, and ultimately decide whether we wanted to proceed or not. That's the lay of the land as I see it. That's the process that makes the most sense to me. I believe that's rooted in our understanding of the various community needs and goals in our own policy documents and what we've seen and heard. And so that's what I think I put on the table in the packet. And I wanted to type that up so it was available generally and folks could see it, read it, refer back to it as well.
I guess just to answer that, thank you first for organizing this so thoughtfully. But Fred, you asked that question, or someone posed the question of why affordable housing.
Yeah, I think it's worth answering.
Yeah, and I think Michael did a beautiful job on organizing that. But I just, sorry folks, I just want to say, as someone who has said, let's hit the brakes, slow down, and evaluate at the rate we're putting up these luxury apartments. I have heard from community, why do we need these luxury apartments? Why do we need these luxury apartments? We need apartments that people can afford. We've said, how do teachers, how do young couples? I agree with you, we heard you, and this is why this is so attractive. I agree, I want to slow down on the luxury apartments before we do evaluations, and I hear you say, we need to provide places and spaces where young folks, old folks, working folks, can be part of our community, and this is it, and we heard you. And I think this is really such a win-win on checking all the boxes that you so clearly laid out, but someone who is, again, said, can we slow this process down for the luxury apartments and investigate what's in between the mansions and the luxury apartments? Gosh, I didn't think this was possible, but I really think this hits so many of those comments that our neighbors have asked us about new development. This looks like it might be a really fabulous answer for our community.
Ira? No? Jean?
I think what these letters of interest have shown us is what's possible with this property. And it's easy for us to look at these letters of interest and understand what can actually go here. So it's confirmed interest and feasibility for a ground lease, first of all. And I think the biggest takeaway is that adaptive reuse of the existing buildings is possible, which really opens up options for us in terms of providing resident benefits like community space, keeping Wonder Spring here, expanding the park, and providing affordable housing for our community. And I also want to reiterate why this site is unique. And there's no other site in Narberth that has this level of community benefit potential. And that's because it is owned by the borough and we can maintain ownership of this property. So we can really shape the property to serve our residents. And I also want to speak about affordable housing and why it's important. Why it should be a priority at this site. So I would ask, like, do we want to keep our downtown strong? Do we want our seniors and essential workers to stay here in Narberth? Do we want to sustain our volunteer fire company? Like, all of these depend on affordable housing to actually work. So it really benefits every resident, not just the people who are moving into those units, but it benefits everyone who lives here. And I also recognize there will always be opposition to affordable housing, especially in an affluent community like ours. But if we want to make sure that Narberth is inclusive, resilient, and walkable, and all of these things that we love about it, I think we really need to start to have people in our community that start advocating for affordable housing and understand why it's important. And so to summarize, like, we've clarified that the ground lease is feasible, that adaptive reuse is feasible, and there's affordable housing potential here. So I support the process that has been outlined. I think we're starting from a much stronger position today than 3 years ago because we have a better understanding. And I think moving to an RFP at this stage is the best transparent and fair way to move forward. I think, and I also want to remind everyone here that any delays on this process I feel it's irresponsible. It risks turning this asset into a liability for our taxpayers who live here. And so this is, and I also want to say I really appreciate having this public discussion. I don't think it's premature. I think even though we're pretty early on in the process, I think it's important to have, and I want to thank everyone for coming out and engaging with this process.
And on that note, I will point out there will be a public comment session at the end of the meeting, so please hold your comments.
Just a couple of things. I'm not going to repeat what everybody said. In terms of, I'll start with the process. These guys will tell you I've been a little bit of a pain in the butt because there have been times where we've talked about this in the executive session and I've wanted to get it out of executive session. I'm very happy that we're getting this out to the public because I feel like this is one of our most important assets that has been, quite frankly, underutilized, and I feel like we haven't necessarily met our fiduciary duty to make sure that the asset's being used in the best way possible. I was also the person that we're talking about who asked for, when they were talking about the sale of the property, to say, well, I need to know what the value of that property before I would even consider it. And so I'm actually very glad that we're taking that off the table, because I did think that that was the wrong thing to move it. I heard the community that they wanted to preserve the park as is. I think one of the things that we didn't mention, and I think it's important to mention, is how much of a swing the adaptive reuse provides to us, because the destruction costs of the school, nobody's mentioned yet, was over $2 million, if I remember correctly, a couple of years ago, right? Or one? I think somebody has, yeah, I think somebody gave us an estimate by now, it would be $2 million. So, you know, we are, by allowing for adaptive reuse, that is not just in the fact that it's a declining asset as the building continues to deteriorate, but it is really important that we both stop the bleeding, and by not tearing the building down. As much as it would be lovely to have a park from corner to corner, as people have advocated, it's just not fiscally possible to do that unless somebody wants to step forward with a 7-figure donation to the borough. It's not fiscally responsible for the residents as a whole for that to happen. You know, in terms of the RFP, the one thing that we didn't discuss that I think is important to put on the table is, because it is borough-owned property, is not actually, if you look at the zoning map, there are no zoning constraints on the property itself. We as a group, and I think this is really important for the community and some of the people who are sitting here, you know, other zoning has, you know, how much, what's the word, non-permeable surfaces there are, and things like that. We have to be very deliberate if we're going to talk about this, about height, density, etc., to make it consistent with the rest of the zoning, both along Montgomery Avenue and, you know, and you know, the neighborhood. You know, it can't be a 7-story building, right? Even though technically there's no zoning that would prevent that. And so I think we have to be very deliberate and aware of that as part of the RFP, to say, you know, how much of the percentage of the front part of the property are you able to cover? How high can it be, etc. I also just want to talk about what affordability means in this context. Because, you know, what we generally look at, one of the proposals talked about 50% of AMI. But generally, for those of us who went to the affordability conference, you know, a lot of folks look at 80% of AMI.
Just area mean income.
Area mean income. You beat me to it, Tim. So for Montgomery County, for a single person, 80% median income. Yeah, sorry. Yep. Is $64,250. So we're talking about, you know, Noah, I think I've referred to you 4 times, but he just got a job of approximately that amount of money. It would allow him to live in an apartment by himself, you know, if he wanted to, or if he moved in with his girlfriend. Right now, he's got to live with me because he can't afford to live anywhere.
So this is personal.
Bill faster. No, but, you know, he did live in, you know, before, when he was, you know, moved back home in college, you know, he was living in an apartment that was approximately at that level. He was paying about $1,800 a month. And so that's about what people would be paying, $1,600 a month. For a couple, it's $73,000. So we're not talking, I want to be just very clear that we are talking about people who are making, you know, decent salaries, first jobs maybe, you know, younger people. My very first time I was on council and went to a civic association meeting as a council person, a person approached me and said to me, "What are you doing about affordable housing? Because I have lived as a renter here for 30 years and I'm going to have to move if I can't find an affordable place to live." She's highly invested in this community. She's active in various civic things, and she feels like she can't afford to be here anymore. And that is what we need to address. And so, yes, I know people think that affordable housing has this dangerous sound to it because, you know, it's going to destroy our property values. But in fact, I think it's going to enhance them. And I think it can enhance, and there's studies that talk about this. First of all, if you have people who are working in our stores who live here, they are not driving into town. Which means, unlike now, where we hear constantly from the store owners, they have no place for their employees to park. It will free up. What do we hear on public health and safety? Parking, 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 speed, speed, speed. Allowing affordable housing within the borough where people can walk to work at our stores and be employed at our stores will actually reduce the carbon footprint, it will reduce our traffic issues, and it will reduce our parking issues. I also think right now the park is incredibly underutilized. And as Michael said, you know, having people live there creates a greater use for the people who live in and around the property. It actually enhances it. My kids used to we used to call it the secret park. The borough should not have an asset that's secret. You know, they called it the secret park because they would go over there and there would be no other kids, whereas if we walked down to the big park, as they called it, you know, it was packed. It also, I mean, Jim will tell you, because he had to clean it up, how many, like, the level of underutilization required, you know, meant that there was graffiti, there was, you know, misuse of the property, et cetera, et cetera. More use, I actually think, creates a safer environment for people so that the young miscreants like Mr. Gaudini won't be hanging out at night, right? Won't be hanging out at night. He admitted he was hanging out at night. So,
It's not a crime.
not a crime. That's all I didn't say.
Against current policy.
Yeah.
Probably not back then.
So, you know, we talk about families, but I also, you know, it's not just families. It's seniors, it's young people starting out who want to be part of our community. You know, I love the idea that, you know, a young person who grew up here would be able to actually get their first apartment here, put down the roots, hopefully stay here, you know, be able to save some money for that first house that's becoming harder and harder to do. You know, there's nothing wrong with that, and there's plenty to be said that's good for that. So I think that's all the additional things that I have to say. I do want to make sure that we are sensitive to the area around there. And, you know, I'm willing to work with the folks who live in that neighborhood to figure out, and hopefully we'll hear from them a lot. But I also think that while there are compromises to be made, there are going to be compromises that have to be made on both sides.
Thank you.
Yeah, all really great comments, and one very encouraging thing about all these proposal letters is that how many of the goals they meet, and they're so encouraging about, as everyone has noted, keeping the park where it is, which is, I've talked to a lot of residents who feel just a variety of ways of things that should happen on that property, but among the most sort of the firm opinions that people have is that the park stay where it is. Not necessarily something I would choose, but it does fulfill that, you know, like as a prerequisite of keeping the park where it is and possibly expanding it seems like a great feature of a number of these proposals, and I think I think one thing we have that hasn't been mentioned enough is that the possibility or the idea that we cease becoming commercial landlords, I think, is something. It's always bugged me that we could be liable for something that goes wrong in the building as it is, and the taxpayers would be on the hook for. I don't even want to think about it. I think the sooner we stop being commercial landlords, the sooner we can stop that worry that something catastrophic will happen there, which is, I'm afraid, is sadly possible. and also freeing up the office from having to deal with being commercial landlords. It's not what we should be paying them for. You know, they have more important things to do running our town. They should not be running, you know, like problems in the bathrooms. As affordable housing, definitely a big concern, and something we should pursue many angles on, and this seems like a good opportunity. So just very encouraging proposals that come through. So the more we can wrap those up in an RFP and get some formal proposals. Sounds great. Looking forward to it.
Mayor Deutsch?
I'm not going to reiterate everything that's been said. Just to sum it up, it makes sense environmentally. We're not taking down a building that can be reused in order to put up. It makes sense economically in terms of providing a place for people, young people, people of middle incomes, middle-aged people, and older people to live. And they can remain in place with their family and friends where they've been for decades. It makes sense from a borough's, responsibility that has been pointed out. I see very little downside other than projected unknown fears of something different. And that's always going to be a concern. But I think on so many levels, it makes sense, and it's responsible use of the borough's asset. It's a responsible, very thoughtful use of a borough's asset. I've always said, I bought a house here. I actually live in the smallest single house in the borough. I do. I love it here, but at some point in my life, I may retire. I may not, but I may. And I don't necessarily want to take care of a full house. And right now, if I wanted to rent, I don't know that I could swing some of these newer apartments. I mean, they're pretty steep. So having a place to look to where I could be among my friends and be among the community I've known and nurtured and loved would be wonderful. I'm not alone. There's a lot of people in my situation. A lot of grandparents who want to be near grandkids. A lot of working people who teachers who maybe teachers of public schools who don't make that kind of income that Narberth is now demanding. So it gives a richness to our community when we can blend socioeconomic groups and we can live together and do different functions and help grow a more integrated community where we just work together and live and appreciate each other for what we offer. I think it's a rich plan. I'd like to see it pursued after my time as mayor.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so Maggie, it sounds like council is interested in moving forward with this general proposal, so let's talk about future timelines and like what would be next steps here.
Right, so I have been reaching out to some colleagues who have done similar or related type projects just to understand from them what the kind of administrative process has looked like for them, some pitfalls, some opportunities, just to try to kind of ground myself in some real world examples of what's been happening. We are also re-engaging conversations with both the County Redevelopment Authority and with the County Economic Development folks to just hear from them if they're able to offer guidance, expertise, consulting services. I don't know. So I myself am just on an administrative fact-finding quest right now to figure out what opportunities are available to us to take advantage of, where we can find resources and assets and champions to help us through this process. I would also recommend to council that we engage in, and I think Michael touched on this, but some community engagement opportunities prior to actually issuing out an RFP, just as both an educational and as well as community feedback for us to understand, this is a group effort, right? The whole community needs to be involved, and we need to make sure that those voices are represented in whatever the RFP ends up looking like. So I think that there's some good opportunities that we want to engage in some open houses or community feedback forums. I don't know 100% at this point what those would look like. I do also want to be cognizant that we have zoning discussions going on with our planning commission related to the 4B and 5A districts, which is not the zoning district that this particular site is in. So to Mike's point, we have the site is unconstrained by zoning in that we own the property, but we also have this kind of concurrent process going on where we're evaluating some other zoning districts, which also includes an open house component that we are looking to schedule at the end of February. So I want to make sure that we're not conflating the two in both timing and in the public's perception as to like which activity, which event is for which purpose, because they can kind of seem like they're a little bit similar conceptually, because we're talking about land uses, we're talking about what sort of future land uses we want to see. We're looking at it from a perspective of here's what we can gain from a community value standpoint, here's what we can gain from a tax revenue and expenditure standpoint. So we're looking at all of the different components that go into it. So I want to make sure that we're not conflating those two things, and that we allow for enough opportunity to have both of those discussions given their due course, and that we don't kind of pinch them together. So with the idea that we're going to have the public meeting for Planning Commission at the end of February, I would suggest that any sort of community engagement that we want to schedule for discussion of Sabine and a future RFP would be then sometime in early spring, sometime after February. That will give us a little bit more time to evaluate our options, speak to some experts, kind of game plan out some of those next steps, do a little bit more data mining and figuring out all of our points that we want to make that might also help to inform our decisions heading into an RFP. And then if we engage in a public process, and then again, depending on what the RFP drafting actually looks like, we can have that potentially together by late spring, early summer. I want to be cautiously optimistic, but also realistic, and kind of given all of the other things we have going on, the bridge project and the zoning work and the grant writing that we're going to be doing in early spring for our Elmwood Avenue pedestrian bridge. Staff time is tied up the first couple of months and some of those other things, so we do want to prioritize this as well. So I do want to be realistic though in what we're going to be able to accomplish in the next 6 months or so. So those are my initial thoughts.
All right, so we might be looking at a public meeting, not a council meeting, but a public engagement meeting end of March or April, or is that?
I think March or April is a good
Okay.
kind of pencil in date. And of course, any meeting that we establish, we will be advertising through all the various channels that we do. I appreciate we have a really nice crowd online tonight and some folks in the audience here, so thank you very much for coming. I encourage you all to stay involved. And then for the folks online, if you're not signed up for our newsletter or in person, check our website, sign up for our newsletter, follow us on social media, Instagram handle at Narberth. Actually, what's our handle?
Would you be kind enough to, and flexible enough to flip the agenda and allow the public comment before the next two agenda items, Fred? Because we have some childcare issues to allow the public
Oh, I'm
comments.
sorry. What do we have, just the committee reports?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you,
All
I
right.
appreciate that.
Do you have anything else to?
No, just I want everyone to, stay tuned. We will be advertising all of these, but yes, that is kind of that is where I am right now, and that is kind of what I think is a reasonable.
Okay.
Can I just say one more quickly that I don't think anyone's mentioned? We had talked about getting estimates for subdivided properties on Montgomery Ave. I think that's part of the thing we're talking about pausing, right? Not looking into that at the moment, seeing whether something like this could work out, and no longer pursue
The appraisal.
the appraisal.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I
Thank you
mean, the
very much.
appraisal's gonna cost us money, so
Right.
if we don't need to do
Yeah.
it,
So
because
that's-
this is a preferred
That's
option.
something I would support, is not moving ahead at this
Yeah.
time with something like that.
I think that is the
Pursuing
current council.
playing more like this.
Yeah.
Okay.
And to your point though, I mean, this is also going to inform the conversation I'm looking at 5B. So for example, if we really could get something like this with attainable housing, well then that changes the calculus for what we're gonna envision in 5B. I mean, so these are in parallel and one should inform the other.
All right, so I think council has, just, I think I think we've all had our say, so, then there's no objection to moving public comment to the next agenda item. All right, so we'll make public comment, the next agenda item. We will start with the room, so anybody in the back row wish to make a public comment? Please start with your name and your address, and then go ahead with your comment.
Serene Chen with 200 Sabine, right across from the development. When we saw the developer proposals packet for 201 Sabine with high-density development taking a service stage, we have a lot of emotions bubbling up, but I decided to leave the emotions out of the public comment and focus on some of the statistics of the borough. So we are currently one public park in downtown Narberth, and the 0.5 acre small playground was Sabine Avenue, and the less than 1 acre recently purchased Bellevue Park, a strip along the creek that are not really easily accessible. The total park area of the borough is about 7 to 8 acres. Narberth is, in the past few years, has added multiple multi-story apartments or condo units. Once these units are filled, the number of the residents in the borough will be approaching 5,000. The borough area is 320 acres. Per national standard and the NRPA park matrix, the park area should be 10 acres per 1,000 residents. For small towns, the median benchmark is 12.6 acres per 1,000 residents because they're less dense than major cities. According to these commonly adopted code standards, we should have 50 to 63 acres in park areas, and we have no more than 8. That's 13% of the small town benchmark and 16% of the national standard. And as taxpayers, we know Narberth charge one of the highest amount of taxes in Lower Marion and Montgomery County. Yet the park ratio is grossly under national standard. So the biggest question many neighbors and I have are, why isn't park and green space prioritized for the public Sabine partial, but high density housing to add on to the deficit is? And as I offered before, I have expertise in land development and capital projects and would love to work with the council and the neighbors more if the park and recreational space takes a front row seat, which I believe is what the majority of residents want to see and would benefit from based on the previous survey. Sometimes you need to step back and ask the why and what, and I keep coming back to the beginning, why does this matter and what's needed the most? I hope there will be open discussions on this before more time and money are spent on things that don't address the priority of the borough, such as the deficit of the park and recreational space. We need quality infrastructure to support the residents. Bill is not always the answer. The Sabine parcel is a rare and probably the last chance to move the needle and make meaningful change on this deficit. Thank you.
Thank you. Lawrence?
Hi, I'm Lawrence Goldberg from 200 Sabine Avenue. I hope that nobody dislocated a shoulder reaching back to pat yourselves on the back, but I appreciate all the efforts that everyone's made here. There's some excellent chiropractors in the borough. But here, let's have a reality check. If this was not December 3rd, but July 3rd, and if it was not 25 degrees outside, but let's say 95 degrees, and if, say, you wanted to go and take a walk, and I know I've seen some of you, like Fred and Jim, I know you have a walking group, would you want to take a walk or you want to take a run in the shade, where would you do it? It doesn't exist. We've been talking about this for years. We're prioritizing it because it really is a need for everyone. So I ask you this, another question. Which is better, 50 or 5,000? Because there's 5,000 residents in this borough. You all, I know you've developed this opinion that the folks on Sabine care about the neighborhood of Sabine. But think about this. That is an opportunity, the only opportunity that you'll ever have for you, for your kids, for your grandkids, for all the generations to expand in a meaningful way and address this huge deficit of parks and recreation that could serve the entire community, the entire 5,000 people. And yet, we're talking about affordable housing. It's wonderful that you have core values, and it's wonderful that you'd like to make this impression, but think about the reality of living in here and the generations to come. If you give this away to developers, you will never get it back. If you develop every square inch, you will never get it back. There was 4 acres, you could have a park there, and you would be increasing by 50% the amount of green space. I envision not what you have there now. Okay, what you have there now is a tot lot. We know it's underutilized. You're absolutely right, Mike. And that's exactly what we want to address. We want a real park. We want shade trees. We want to work with you to help plant those trees, to help raise money towards the park instead of other people raising money for lawyers. We want to be community partners, but you haven't listened to us. I know I'm going to run over. Please give me 1 more minute. There's on the website, the last time that there was public engagement, this was in 2020. It's still on the website. Let me remind you of the results. There were several hundred people that were polled. 257, by far and away, the majority of the people. And that's not all. There's not 257 people on our street. That's neighbors from all over the borough said that the #1 priority is using some or all of the property for outdoor public space for community gathering and recreation. That's what the 5,000 people in this borough want. I know some of you may have heard some comments about this or that need. There's a lot of needs, but 5,000 people could make use of this parcel if you found a way to make it, and I realize it costs money, but we could work with you to make it an affordable option. That was #1, that was 257 people. There were 7 different choices. The 7th and bottom choice, which had only 12% of the response that the top choice did, was using the property as a revenue generating resource. So you've ignored for 5 years, you asked for our opinion, you got it, and you've ignored for 5 years. Nobody's pursued any way, how could we fund this, how can we make it work, how can we have the minimal impact and the maximal use of putting a park there. And for 5 years, you've looked at something else, then you asked the question, you got the answer, and you didn't like it. So you proceeded to pursue the things that were at the bottom of the list. There was a presentation made by a consultant where they showed 5 different options. I'm sure you all remember, it's also on the website. Option 1 was to use the whole parcel as a park from end to end. It said it would be pursued. It hasn't been pursued. Option 4 was the only other one that was kept on the table, and that had 25% of the land. You can look at the picture. It's on the website. 25% of the land was to be some kind of development, and it was all on Montgomery Avenue. 0 in Sabine. Okay, so now you flip the tables. You're talking about having, it looks like 75% of it be a development, a dense development on the street. This is unacceptable. It will never be acceptable. I feel like you've been asked to do the catering for the Vegetarian Society's annual banquet, and you're arguing about whether to serve beef or chicken. You're arguing something that's simply unacceptable. Please, I'm asking you, please engage with the community. Please reach out, even to the folks who are threatening to sue you, and I'm not one of them. Reach out to everyone. Open a dialogue. Ask again, what do we really think? And you can start from what you have from 5 years ago, and you can work on the #1 list and find out how can we afford to do this and how can we achieve this goal. If you manage to do this and get through the years and years of litigation and sledgehammer this in and get 20 or 30 or 40 units, you're helping 20 or 30 or 40 people, of which half of them probably won't even be from the borough. Wonder Spring, 85% of the students in Wonder Spring and 100% of the employees, the last time we checked, are not even NARBs. So if you want to help the 5,000 NARBs, please work with us on a park. That's what we want. Thanks for letting me go.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
All right. I'll start in the back row. You wish to make a comment? Or?
Oh, sure. Well, I kind of like sometimes...
You give your name and your address.
My name's Jeff Lorenz. I live at 205 Lansman Lane. I'm also the founder of Refugia. We're an ecological landscape design build located in the old Price House on Meeting House in Montgomery. And I'd actually reached out to Fred a while ago trying to look for options to potentially find like a creative use for some of the borough property as a way to, with the focus of our business being around like creating more green space, using both residential and public space to create more wildlife habitat, and also create education opportunities. And also as a place, as a resident, to also be able to keep my business within the borough. The Price House is going to be developed, as you guys know, and at some point, so I've just been kind of like pushed around to like various short-term leases around the borough. And a lot of the places I've always been behind the developers. Unfortunately, I mean, I talked to the Albrecht family, they already sold the property and now it's been developed into apartments. Price House is gonna have townhouses behind it. It was also the original borough building. And anyway, but that's not really my point. I reached out to Fred to just see about some available space to like kind of consider, and I talked to Lower Merion Township as well about like somewhere where we could utilize existing space that is already owned by a township to kind of as a place where maybe we could have a place for our business, but also use it as kind of sustainability hub, have it like work in the off hours as a place, as a community engagement space, public space, like try to envision with a lot of creatives, there's a lot of like very talented, very interesting people that live in Narberth, and how can we kind of like invest in who's already like who lives here. I guess I didn't really prepare to speak quite like this tonight, but I would encourage as part of the public engagement is also to think about not just what Sabine could be if we kind of think about how that could be utilized as more green space for the community, but also to think about what's happening with other properties that that we can look forward to. I mean, we've got a whole, like, I know we referenced like stores downtown, and there's not very many of them open, right? Let's be honest about that. And also think about some of the properties that, like I referenced, the Price House. There was also, I talked to Jason Gordon years ago about the church before it got torn down, and that he wants to build apartments up there. I think there's other opportunities to consider creating more of a vision around from which we encourage developers to like look through a lens at what we want as a community and think about if we're looking for affordable housing, how can we encourage that? How can we kind of allow for more of that kind of like visioning and if we have this wish list of things that I think you guys put a ton of really good effort into, and I'm into it. I actually showed up tonight thinking that it was going to look like a bunch of those buildings that were in the packet that you put together, and I was like, oh God, we're going to be Nardmore, you know? And I got really concerned about that because that's definitely, I don't think anyone wants that. But I guess my point is, like, can we kind of go up to the 10,000 foot view for a minute and also think about, all right, what's the vision for Narberth that could include, like, if developers, and it's clear from like the pictures in that packet, and like, you know, they want to sick on this town, right? And use as much of that space, as much available space as possible to put up apartments. Let's find a more creative way of encouraging them to, or we creating a, I don't know, I'm sorry, I'm like missing the words right now, but just to like if they would like to purchase property, if they want to develop, if they want to turn it into housing or something, let's encourage them to do it in a way that is responsible, that does provide affordable housing, and think about other ways that we might encourage this outside of just Sabine. I think sometimes it's easy to tunnel vision on a certain, like, one area.
Please finish up your remarks.
Yeah, I don't really, I'll stop now.
Okay.
But
thank you.
I would just like to ask that as we think, like, I would love to also keep my business in Narberth, and we've worked on well over 150, almost to like 200 properties within a 5 mile radius of Narberth and in Narberth to kind of take Doug Tallamy's vision of this homegrown national park and connect green space across residential and public spaces. And that potential can even grow like beyond what Refugia does as a business. But I'd love to be able to continue to do that in our neighborhood and continue to figure out how we can do that as a community.
Thank you.
I'm Constantine, 400 Narberth. For 3 years or more, probably 5 years, we've been coming to these meetings asking, no disrespect to you, Ms. Dobbs, but asking for engagement. And we have gotten none. Every time the question has been asked, there's radio silence, nothing. You go into hiding, into your executive sessions, and don't come out and try to come up with different plans. We have 800 kids in this town, under 18, who need recreational space. Our athletic teams need full fields, and one way to do it is to tear that building down and make it corner to corner park. $1.5 million is only $1,000 per household. Okay, you could do that over 4 years, and that would be taken care of. Taking up the asphalt is relatively easy. That's why it has been underutilized, is because it's a parking lot for derelict cars and trucks. You fail to listen to the residents. You've been reelected by default because no one runs against in this town. And by the way, I don't know why you specifically are still president. Do you have an election between yourselves every year? Because if you looked, you got the least votes out of this election by several hundred. That says something from the community, right? It's not just me. There's a lot of others who think you should be doing a better job. Someone of you else should step up and take the lead. Michael, your family and my family have gotten along, but you're not the person.
I just have to say, I think ad hominem attacks are not public comments or civic dialogue.
They're allowed to criticize their
You can
government.
ad hominem attack me.
I would like
All
to
of
know.
the ideas.
Okay,
I don't have a problem with it.
I would just like to respond on the organization of council leadership. And it's to say that the council president always gets the lower votes because they're the face of the kind of the punching bag of Narberth, for better or for worse. So if you look back historically at any election, it's always the council person president. It's always the council persons who have been on the longest that get the lowest votes. And that's because they're the forward-facing body of this Narberth council. You're the spokesperson. And Fred has been elected as president, I feel to say, by his council peers because we appreciate the leadership and the ability to take those hits. So while I do appreciate public comment, I don't think there's room for ad hominem attacks, and I just want to really clarify and support that decision.
Fred takes hits, and he also has to put up with us.
So to answer your question, council
Yeah.
does select the president and the vice president. We will do that. There'll be another vote in January when the new council is seated. And I mean, I don't think it's out of line. I think you're allowed to criticize the.
Sure. I just think ad hominem attacks are not helpful in public dialogue.
I mean,
that's all.
Factual information.
I would, okay. Let's move on to, oh, sorry, go ahead.
So not on Sabine.
That's fine.
Forget to identify yourself.
The Kathy Hutchison, 1334 Montgomery, the Windmont condos. The traffic study that was done on Montgomery Avenue corridor, I still have not found any information on Lower Merion's website about that, and I was wondering if there was anything that was going to be shared in this forum today about that.
We haven't gotten it yet.
You'll be the first to know.
Every morning I sit, every morning I sit traffic on Montgomery Avenue, and I'm not just the Narberth section, because on the corner, but I turn and then I go through the Lower Merion and I go through the Bryn Mawr section, and every single time I'm sitting there going like, I wonder which of these intersections is worse than mine, because there are some other ones that are pretty bad. So
We haven't gotten it.
We believe they'll be presenting, they'll do a public presentation on like the Narberth portion of a specific part of the public presentation. I'm not sure if the exact meeting has been
I think
set
they
up
said
yet.
February, it will be the public session.
Yeah, we haven't yet gotten the date as to when that public engagement session and presentation is scheduled, but as soon as we know, we'll blast it in the newsletter and put it on the website, so I'll send you a personal email.
I've been encouraging people to sign up for your newsletter as well.
Thank
so.
you, thank you.
Appreciate it.
That's helpful.
All right.
We're dying to see it too, Kathy.
Any other public comment in the room? Okay. We'll move online. Just begin by raising your hand, and then I will. Okay, I see iPhone, so I think it's you, Carol Marie. If you want to unmute.
That you are correct. That is me.
Okay.
So, Fred, I have come to council meetings for years, repeatedly asking for updates on Sabine, and you say nothing is happening. I feel like you're lying to my face, saying nothing is going on when clearly there have been meetings and discussions outside the purview of the public. This council or the office has slow walked and delayed my right to know request regarding the development of Sabine property. You've been planning this redevelopment since March, according to the letter Maggie wrote to tenants at 201, sent on 12/1 of this year. Quote, council will be discussing some prospective letters of intent submitted by developers who have recently expressed interest in some sort of redevelopment, adaptive reuse of the site, according to council's issued, quote, statement of fact-finding in March of this year. Is this phrase, fact-finding, to get around the questions we've been using about asking for information, appraisals or assessments, RFP, RFQ intentions, letting the public know? It is not lost that this seems like you are sidestepping and using misleading language to not tell us what's going on. You know, the question is, why would people want to go to these public meetings about development when you're not listening to what we have to say? And we see, it looks like to the public that this entire procedure has been a sham done behind closed doors and an executive session. If you're open to the public, we would have been involved from the start. And as Lawrence said, under President Muderick, the neighbors and the public were asked, and they spoke loudly in the 2020 RES study, childcare, park, green space, open space, no housing, food bank, playground were the top 8 out of 10 desires of the community. We spoke, but it was ignored because it did not fit your and Montgomery County Planning Commission's grand density plan for Narberth. If people in this community wanted to live in a high-density area, we would have moved to one. We want a lovely small town. We moved here, we made the investment in our homes, raised our families, and built our community. We do not want to be inundated with more apartments. Have you actually done research to see if more apartments are needed? If you talk to realtors, there are 110 apartments in Narberth for rent, and that doesn't include the ones who self-rent who are not on the big advertisements. If people wanted to rent in Narberth, all the apartments would be rented and there would be no vacancies. So instead of building more apartments in Narberth, let's build something that will be of value to the residents, not the developers. How about building small, affordable homes? Not like the $1 million cottages on Marion Avenue, but some real, small, affordable homes. It seems as if you are trading Sabine Park that you all already know could not be developed for more high-density apartments. The lack of budgeting and previous mismanagement cannot be solved by overdeveloping our community. All this seems to be orchestrated to keep the public out of the conversation. And I also have a big question for you. Will Sabine Park have permanent open space protection placed on it? 3 different councils over the years have tried to take the park. In the 1920s was the first time, the 1980s, and now. Citizens of Narberth should not have to lawyer up to fight the borough to keep our open space that is rightfully ours. So we would like an easement on this park so no other residents have to fight the borough to keep the park.
So you have all of the letters of interest that we've received. They're all in the packet. Like all of you can check the dates on them. Most of them are relatively recent. The reason why we're having this discussion now is because there have been several letters submitted from developers and sent to council. You heard my summary of what's been discussed in executive session. We're not voting on any of these proposals. The next step is
Yes,
going
but
to
they're
be an
out there.
RFP. I'm speaking right now, Caroline. The next step is going to be an RFP, and as Maggie laid out, there's going to be a public information session and discussion session before we send out an RFP. So there's no, we haven't made a decision on this site, and we still will not make a decision on this site for several months at the earliest. So there's nothing more to reveal. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. You can look and see what the proposals we have. We've laid out our reasoning, and I would ask you to engage with that instead of imagining some sort of conspiracy. We are being public about what we think is best for the site. We're telling you, this is what we think is best for the site. This is what we would like to put in an RFP. So
And what
I
if the
would ask you to
residents
engage
don't
with
want that? What if the residents don't want that?
You are welcome to make public comments and explain to us why you think this is a bad idea. I look forward to your feedback. You're going to have many opportunities to respond to these ideas. Your time has expired, though, so I'm going to move on to the next person. Anybody else who is online who wishes to make a comment, please raise your hand. I'm not seeing anybody right now with raised hands. I'm still not seeing, okay, one more minute. You've already made your comment. Do you have something else to add, Lawrence?
You're seeming very generous tonight, so let me give you a calm comment. Follow. The problem is, you've never actually looked at option one. If you took a year and focused all your efforts on how could we affordably make this happen, how could we serve all 5,000 people in the borough for improving parks and recreation, how could we make a go of it, how could we partner with the community instead of fighting the community, and then how could we apply for some grants, maybe we get them, maybe we don't, and then you try that for a year and a half, and if it doesn't work, then you move on to something else. The problem is 5 years have passed and no one even tried. No one even looked. It's by far and away what the community wants. I don't know who you're asking, but there's over almost 400 people in that survey, and that's what they prioritize. It may be great if you could get 20 or 30 housing units that are $1,800.
All right, Lawrence, you are repeating yourself at this point.
All right,
Thank you.
Can I just respond in part on what the community wants? Because I have the survey right in front of me. And you are allowed to pick three options, up to three.
Mm-hmm.
The first, you are right, but it doesn't say park to park. The number one choice was using some or all of the property for outdoor public space for community gathering and recreation. For example, expanded parks, playing fields, etc., 284. What we're talking about matches that because it says some or all. Now, we don't know who some and who wanted all. The second one, preserving the existing daycare and community not-for-profit uses, regardless of whether the existing building and lot configurations are changed to accommodate them. So those people were even willing to destroy the parkland to do that, and 174 people said they wanted that. That was the next highest one.
Mike, that's not...
Wait, Lawrence.
That's not what's
check,
on the website.
Check. I'm reading right from it, Larry.
I printed it out.
Using some or all of the property for indoor public space for community gathering and community-oriented organizations and or to serve underserved group, for example, seniors or teens, 158.
It says 257 on the website. I printed this out 2 hours ago. I don't understand what the disconnect is.
Okay, well, I just pulled this off the website. It's 201 Sabine, your public, some parts, something sites, 11, 20, 21. PDF. That's what I'm looking at.
I can show you the
So,
document. I printed out.
We'll deal with that after.
So,
We'll
and
deal with
then
that
there's
at the meeting.
the
Why don't
next,
you-
the highest one is, so,
Those are
we're
relatively
talking
minor
about doing
differences.
community gathering, community organizations. I would be in favor of making sure that any proposal includes that. Ensuring that any development advances the borough's environmental goals, such as carbon neutrality and stormwater management, 123. Not having an increase in my personal property taxes to replace revenue from 201 Sabine, 58. Preserving the existing building lot configuration, parking, traffic circulation to the extent possible, regardless of its effect on the Borough's operating budget on my personal tax, it's 55. So the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the 9 things that people said that they wanted, and I recognize that there's a significant fall off between the top 5 and the next 2. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, 6. The top 4 and the next 2 would be met in whole or in part by these potential proposals. And I certainly would push to make sure that things like community gathering, community art spaces get included in whatever development we want. So it's not a binary choice here. There were multiple things that we asked the community what they were interested in, and they responded with multiple requests. And to suggest that it was simply a binary, we want a park versus anything else, that's not what the community was asked, and that's not how the community answered.
All right. I'm about to close public comment. Does anybody else online wish to make a public comment? If so, please raise your hand. Okay, public comment is now closed. Thank you, everyone. And as I said, this topic will be revisited down the line starting early next year as we seek out a partner for the RFP and as we start working on the topic of an RFP. Thank you, everyone, for speaking. All right, I'm going to move on to remaining agenda items, which I think is just the community reports. FNA?
We didn't meet
Okay.
since the last
Infrastructure?
report.
All right. Public health and safety?
We haven't met yet.
Yeah, see, I should have just, where was that from? All right, we've already had a public comment.
Greg, I do just want to mention a couple things about, we received an email from the Parks and Rec Committee with 2 proposed dates for movies in the park.
I forgot to mention that, yeah.
So I don't have the dates yet for, because the 2 movies are proposed in May and September. I don't yet have the dates because they might be close in date to NARB Earth Day and then the Music Fest. I believe that Parks and Rec scheduled them so that they would be the weekend after.
I think so.
I think was the intent, but I don't have the dates of those events as of yet. So we're penciling them in, but we do have those 2 dates. So we'll be announcing those when we have final dates for that. But those were proposed by Parks and Rec, so we can take a look at that at an upcoming meeting and finalize those. And then I did also hear from the organizers of the Take a Breather Foundation for the annual Narberth Run. So we have a tentative date for that as well. Once we work with the organizers, we'll get that posted on the schedule. And then Emily sent out something to you all earlier today with the update on where we are with our appointments for boards and commissions and folks who have applied. We do have a number of vacancies and a number of people, or a number of vacancies that don't have applications yet. So to everybody who's still online and in the room, if you would like to volunteer for a board or commission, please check our website for available seats that you can apply for. The application form is also available on the website.
Yeah, I mean, we'll hopefully be making our appointments at our next meeting.
Yes.
So encourage
Yes.
people to apply before the end of the year so you can be part of these commissions when they start meeting in January.
Yeah, so for all of the requests for reappointment and any new applications, we'll be reviewing and making those approvals at the December business meeting. However, if folks apply after the fact, we can, still make appointments on a rolling basis, but that'll be kind of our end of year deadline for this year.
Okay, thank you, Maggie. Any other announcements?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, we have an executive session after this? It's listed, but I don't recall any executive session topic.
We were going to discuss personnel matters, but it can be tabled.
Well, it's up to you. I mean, do you want to have?
We have a very brief.
Okay, we will have an executive session after this meeting to discuss personnel matters. There will not be a vote after the executive session. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second? All right. All those in favor of adjourning? All right. Thank you once again. And,